Chapter 467. Fifth step backtrack. Sing Hui's gaze fell on the backtrack and he frowned slightly. The cooldown time actually increased from 22 hours to 24 hours. Exactly 2 days, but this mutation, can I choose to go back in time? It was hard to say whether this effect was good or bad. Previously, he had to wait for 24 hours before activating the backtrack technique, but after this mutation, he could choose the time to go back in time. In other words, even if he used the backtrack technique just now, he could return his body to the state before the backtrack technique in the next second. There was no need to wait for another 24 hours, which greatly increased the operability. Just like when he used his sword intent to temper his mental strength, he could only hold on for less than an hour. After an hour, his soul would collapse, and for the next 21 hours, he would be in a state of non-existence, wasting 11.5 hours, which was close to a day's worth of time. But now, the mutation of the backtrack technique solved this problem. Also, if he was in a life and death battle with an opponent, and both sides were injured, if he could rely on the backtrack technique to return his body to its peak state, he could immediately kill the opponent. But the backtrack technique's cooldown time was 24 hours later. By the time he activated the backtrack technique, the opponent was long gone, or had used various external forces or recovery characteristics to return to their original state. It was too late for regrets. And now, the backtrack technique's cooldown time could be controlled, which also perfectly solved this drawback. Another point, it was that he was being set up by others. Those who knew about the backtrack technique understood that the backtrack technique's cooldown time was 24 hours. This way, it was easy for others to set up a trap to target him. Killing many birds with one stone. The fifth step backtrack technique is already like this. I really don't know what kind of changes will occur when it reaches the sixth step. In addition, any skill that reaches the 10th step will undergo a new mutation. What kind of mysteries will the 10th step backtrack technique give birth to? Sing Hui was somewhat fascinated. But now, he planned to keep 126 Taoist rhymes in reserve, in case he encountered a life-threatening situation where he could use the primal chaos level to survive. The other 100 Taoist rhymes would be used to cultivate the reversal of yin and yang. The reversal of yin and yang was related to the concealment of his whereabouts. Once it reached the realm of great success, even the swordsman in the sky who held his spiritual imprint might not be able to lock onto his position and send down his main battle incarnation to kill him. This way, it would be foolproof. Now that I've mastered the art of backtracking, I've reached the perfection stage. Next, I can try to condense a fusion reactor in my body and break through to the never-ending stage. Qing Su thought to himself as he constantly thought about the knowledge he had learned about nuclear fusion in the past. At the same time, he took out the World Inferno art. Through understanding the cultivation method of the World Inferno art, he gained a deeper understanding of the various descriptions of the never-ending realm. You can give it a try. A gleam flashed through Qing Su's eyes. In the next moment, his figure flashed and appeared in the courtyard. When he saw Qing Su appear, a blue darkness realm guard immediately came over to receive him. He bowed politely, Lord Yu Qing. Sing Hui glanced at the green hell realm guard and felt a little strange. After all, he was the benefactor who saved Su Yuan and allowed him to regain his consciousness. Why was the guard Su Xiao used to protect him only at the green hell realm? However, when he felt that there was not a single cultivator above the green hell realm in the entire courtyard, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, what happened? The green hell realm guard hesitated for a moment and replied, it's the North Moon Peak. The North Moon Peak sent people to intercept the goods of our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce 4 times in a row. They even took out those goods and sold them openly at the trading market under the North Moon Peak. This time, the goods are very important to our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Eldest Miss personally led a team of experts to protect them secretly. She's prepared to teach those people from the North Moon Peak who dared to intercept the goods of our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce an unforgettable lesson. Hasn't the strategy of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce always been to focus on defense? Now that they've come out in full force, aren't they afraid that the North Moon Peak is luring the snake out of its hole? I'm not sure about that. Eldest Miss has probably already investigated it thoroughly and is confident that nothing will go wrong. Ching Su nodded when he heard that. Although he planned to interfere with the matters of the Hidden Sword Continent, the Hidden Sword Continent was not the Eastern Wilderness world. In the Eastern Wilderness world, he was already strong enough to suppress all the forces by himself. However, in the Hidden Sword Continent, at least if the experts of the North Moon Peak came out in full force, he would not be able to resist. Moreover, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce was not at the point where it was about to be destroyed. Even if he wanted to make a move, he would have to wait until the entire Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce was in despair before he made a move. Only then would he be able to obtain the greatest benefits. Are you familiar with the surrounding terrain? I need an empty place where there are few people to cultivate and experiment. An empty place with no people. The Green Hell Realm Guard pondered for a moment and immediately thought of something. Sir, why don't you go to the Emerald Swamp 6,000 kilometers away? Although the Emerald Swamp is not a large swamp, it has a radius of 800 kilometers. Moreover, there are no special products there and a large number of Class 2 scorpion crocodiles live there. Basically, no one would stay in that area. The Emerald Swamp. Xing Hui nodded. In the end, he said to the Green Hell Realm Guard, why don't you tell President Su Xiao that if she is really out of ideas, she can send a message to me. Perhaps I will have a way to save the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. The Green Hell Realm Guard was slightly stunned. During this period of time, they had already understood that although Xing Hui had a high cultivation level, he was only in the Transcendent Realm. He was not even as strong as the never-ending Realm Elders of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. How could he be a match for the North Moon Peak that had several Golden Elixir Realm experts? This was also the reason why Su Xiao did not ask Xing Hui to help even though the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce was in a crisis. However, the other party had good intentions, so he could only agree. I will pass on these words to young mistress. Xing Hui nodded. He leaped up and broke through the air on his sword. In the blink of an eye, he had already turned into a stream of light and flew toward the Emerald Swamp. Stepping on the flowing fire sword and feeling the strong wind blowing against his face, Xing Hui could not help but sigh. I also need to change my flying sword. Although the flowing fire sword has reached the upper grade of the 9th level and is completely suitable for my current cultivation level, and even most of the Golden Elixir Realm experts of ordinary birth use flying swords that are only at the 9th level, but I have always relied on the advantage of flying swords when fighting with others. If I can buy an upper grade of the 10th level flying sword, my chances of winning against Golden Elixir Realm experts will be much higher. However, flying swords were different from divine weapons. The price of flying swords was usually much higher than divine weapons. A 10th level flying sword could easily be sold at the price of an 11th level divine weapon. Therefore, if Xing Hui really wanted to buy an upper grade of the 10th level flying sword, he would have to prepare at least 100 Taoist rhymes item. Even if he met a seller who was in a hurry to sell it, it would be hopeless if he did not have at least a few dozen Taoist rhymes. I remember that the last time Divine Punishment was put on a sale before our Heaven Dome Empire destroyed it. At that time, an upper grade of the 10th level flying sword only cost 30 Taoist rhymes, and a lower grade of the 12th level divine weapon was actually willing to sell for 100 Taoist rhymes. Unfortunately, I did not have any Taoist rhymes on me at that time, so I did not make it to this auction. It seems that I have to ask people to pay more attention to the movements in the Chaos Temple. If there really is a Chaos organization that is facing a Chaos war, they will sell a lot of divine weapons. The 126 Taoist rhymes that I have in reserve will be immediately put to use. Xing Hui thought to himself. He had already projected his consciousness into the Chaos Temple and directly transmitted his orders to Yan Huang, Xian Long, Ling Yu, and the others. They were now completely unable to help him on the battle level, but with the identity of the Son of Chaos, they were still quite useful in gathering information. After flying on the sword for 4 hours, Tsing Hui appeared in the Jadeite swamp. This swamp was just like what the Qing Ming Realm Guard said. It was a life-forbidden zone. Due to the large amount of poisonous fog and fierce beasts, not to mention Awakening Realm and True Qi Realm cultivators, even Spirit Refining Realm cultivators could fall in this swamp if they were not careful. As for mortals below the Awakening Realm, they would die no matter how many came. Tsing Hui searched the sky for a while and soon stopped at a relatively high place. Then, with a flip of his hand, 6 formation flags shot out, covering a radius of 10 kilometers. These 6 formation flags were not extraordinary treasures. They were just one of the treasures collected by the Create Evolve Mysterious sect. Relying on the formation flags, one could derive a formation that could confuse others and also had a warning function. The formation was not strong, and true element realm cultivators could break it with a little effort. It was far from being comparable to the Void Restriction Mysterious formation, but it was more than enough to be used as a warning. After casting down the formation, Qing Su landed on the ground and sank into his thoughts very soon. The most important factor in nuclear fusion is gravity, or in other words, high pressure. Aside from that, it's temperature. The critical temperature of complete nuclear fusion is 40 billion degrees. Even with how brutal the world-burning art is, I can't heat up my elemental energies to such a degree. Moreover, the temperature that can erupt from complete nuclear fusion is far greater than a hydrogen bomb. As a result, complete nuclear fusion is clearly undesirable. I can only use the tunneling effect to lower the efficiency of fusion and test the limits of what I can endure right now. After repeating the plan in his mind, his eyes flashed with a bright light. In the next moment, the backtrack technique was activated. Then, the vigorous and violent energy in his body began to circulate and accelerate at a terrifying speed. Under his precise control, trace elements began to separate from the elemental core. Simply put, when the electrons outside the nucleus broke away from the binding of the nucleus, 2 nuclei would attract and collide with each other, causing the nuclei to fuse. During this process, due to a large amount of electrons and neutrons breaking away from the binding of the nucleus, energy fluctuations would be released in all directions, forming a terrifying energy flood. Due to the fusion of 2 atomic nuclei, the transformation of one type of atomic nucleus into another type of atomic nucleus would result in the birth of a new atomic nucleus. It would then be able to recombine with the other atomic nuclei and continue to release energy. The cycle would repeat endlessly. This was the principle of a fusion reactor. At the same time, it was also the key to Tsing Hui stepping into the endless realm. Chapter 468. Rumble. In the Emerald Swamp, a terrifying power suddenly erupted, bringing with it a violent and blazing heat wave that swept across, destroying the swamp within a radius of tens of kilometers in one fell swoop. In the core area, the wet and dry earth was almost burned into glass. After a while, a figure once again rushed out of the blazing flames. It was Tsing Hui. Due to the technique of backtracking, Qing Su did not seem to be in a horrible shape at all. Even his vital energies were maintained at their peak condition. However, as he looked down at the emerald swamp that was still burning with heat waves, he felt rather helpless. I failed again. Tsing Hui calculated the time. This was already his 12th failure. In other words, this was the 12th time that he had lost control of the energy in his body, and the controllable fusion had turned into an uncontrollable fusion. In the end, he had been blown up by the energy in his body and not even his bones remained. There's nothing wrong with my theory, and there's nothing wrong with my idea. Even if the energy cultivated by the world-burning art meets the requirements of the controllable fusion reactor in my body, the difficulty of perfectly fusing these 3 to form a stable controllable fusion reactor will immediately increase exponentially. Tsing Hui rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Being blown up time and time again until not even his bones remained, no one would be willing to continuously enjoy this kind of experience. In less than a month, he was already somewhat mentally and physically exhausted. Fortunately, dying 12 times in a month wasn't without any gains. Just now, the controllable nuclear fusion reactor has been formed, and it lasted for less than an hour. Unfortunately, when I started to test my attack method, I kept drawing energy from the fusion reactor in my body, which immediately affected the stability of the fusion reactor in my body, causing the energy to go out of control, and in the end, I was blown up into nothingness. Xing Hui carefully recalled every bit of this failure. After a month, he was getting closer and closer to success. He estimated that in this 1 or 2 months, or perhaps just an opportunity, he would be able to completely stabilize the fusion reactor in his body, condense an energy core in his body, and use the energy core as a foundation to allow the energy in his body to grow and multiply endlessly, stepping into the realm of ceaseless. The power is not small. After Xing Hui memorized the experience of his failure, he looked down. Although he had tried his best to release his energy at the moment when he lost control of his energy, the destructive power of the explosion still reached a radius of 20 to 30 kilometers, which was equivalent to the destructive power of the eternal resplendent strike, when he manifested his gold crow body. If he hadn't squandered his energy at the last moment, and instead used fusion to stimulate all the energy in his body, the power, it would definitely improve by a huge margin. It might even be close to a pseudo-divine ability, which was the power of a lesser divine ability. There's a fusion reactor hidden in his body. He's a human bomb. With the backtracking technique in hand, I can use it as a killing move. Although the power of a lesser divine ability can't be compared to a true divine ability, the destructive power it can cause at the level of the Golden Core stage is absolutely devastating. If an ordinary Golden Core stage cultivator is not adequately prepared, I'm afraid they won't have the slightest ability to resist. They will be dragged down by the power of my self-explosion and die on the spot. Even if they react in time and have a 10th order armor and a rare treasure to resist the damage of the flames, they will inevitably be seriously injured. However, Xing Hui understood that this method was not a long-term solution. He could only use it together with the backtracking technique as a killing move. The most important thing now was to find a way to stabilize the fusion reactor in his body as soon as possible. As soon as he thought of the power of the fusion reactor containing the characteristics of elemental fusion and the power of the vital essence, Xing Hui couldn't help but show a smile on his face. The power of the vital essence cultivated by the world-burning art was astonishing in itself. In addition, Xing Hui used a new idea to condense a fusion reactor in his body, making the vital essence even more destructive. Perhaps this vital essence couldn't be compared to other people's vital essence in terms of wondrous uses, but in terms of pure destructive power, it was definitely twice as powerful as an ordinary cultivator's vital essence. Once he was able to truly condense the fusion reactor and step into the never-ending realm, relying on this destructive true yuan, a full-powered attack would probably be comparable to the attack of an ordinary golden elixir realm expert when he unleashed the power of the golden elixir realm. One had to know that golden core stage cultivators usually only unleash the power of their golden core for the first attack. As for Xing Hui, his vital essence was endless, and his attacks were endless. Just as Xing Hui was using all his energy to break through to the endless realm, Su Xiao and the others from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce returned to the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce with dejected expressions. What do we do? What do we do? They actually captured Elder Jean Yin alive. Furthermore, they want us to hand over the item that carries the Tao with 100 Taoist rhymes to ransom her. Damn it, they say it's a thief, but in reality, everyone knows that the one who did this is the Golden Core Stage Guest Elder of the North Moon Peak, Du Longzi. He only gave us 10 days to prepare the item that carries the Tao. Once 10 days are up, if we still can't deliver the item that carries the Tao with 100 Taoist rhymes, he'll directly kill Elder Jean Yin. There are only 3 Endless Realm Elders in our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Elder Dan Qing was severely injured during the battle with Mu Yinglong of the North Moon Peak, and his foundation was damaged. Till now, he has yet to recover. Elder Si Haiping has already been roped in by the North Moon Peak. It's already the limit if he doesn't cause trouble for our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. How can we still count on him to help? The remaining dozen or so transcendent stage cultivators are either injured or have left. If anything happens to Elder Jean Yin, our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce will really be finished. In the hall, the few injured people whose auras had shrunk were all extremely anxious. Their faces were filled with fear and uneasiness. Su Zhao's face was also filled with bitterness. If not for Su Tong comforting her, she would have lost her composure. At this moment, another guard ran in. When he saw that the atmosphere in the hall was a little off, he didn't know whether to continue reporting or temporarily retreat. "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" On the other hand, Su Tong remained calm as she looked at the guard and asked in a low voice. "This is Elder Fei Tai Lai, Elder Fei Tai Lai. He's out of seclusion. I remember that he was in seclusion 3 months ago. He said that he was going to cultivate a powerful cultivation technique. Has he finally succeeded?" Su Xiao, who originally had a bitter expression, seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She hurriedly stood up and asked in surprise. "No, no." The guard hesitated for a moment and said softly, 10 days ago, there was no movement from the food we sent to Elder Fei's cultivation room. Just this morning, the door to Elder Fei's cultivation room suddenly opened by itself. When we entered Elder Fei's cultivation room, we realized that Elder Fei had already left. He even left a message, saying that he needed to travel to find an opportunity to break through to the Endless Realm. The date of his return is uncertain. The date of his return is uncertain. These 4 words seemed to have sucked all the energy out of Su Zhao's body in an instant, causing her to powerlessly sit back down in her seat. In the hall, other than Su Tong, the other transcendent stage cultivator and 6 true element stage cultivators' expressions also changed. The date of his return is uncertain. They didn't need to guess to know that this Elder Fei Tai Lai would never return. Evidently, he had seen through the difficult situation that Su Xiao was currently facing. In order to prevent himself from dying mysteriously like the other 3 transformative stage practitioners who had supported her, he had long withdrawn himself and escaped from this whirlpool. The so-called wandering in search of an opportunity to break through to the never-ending stage was merely an excuse. Damn it. Back then, when the old president was still around, he had trusted Fei Tai Lai wholeheartedly. If it wasn't for the old president's financial support, how could Fei Tai Lai have today's achievements? I'm afraid that he can forget about breaking through to the prominent sage stage in his entire life. But now, when our Divine Grace Merchant Guild needs his help the most, he actually found an excuse to escape. He's simply ungrateful. Su Tong noticed the strange expressions on everyone's faces and hurriedly reprimanded them. Under this reprimand, the transcendent stage cultivators and true element stage cultivators who originally had some ulterior motives instantly felt guilty. However, one of the middle-aged men suddenly stood up and said in a deep voice, "Actually, in my opinion, Elder Fei Tai Lai's final decision is understandable." "Elder Xing Lian, what do you mean by that?" Su Tong's expression darkened slightly as she glared at him coldly. However, there wasn't any anger on Xing Lian's face. Instead, he faced her and said, "I'm just talking about the reality that we're currently facing. When the Divine Grace Merchant Guild was at its peak, there were only 3 Endless Realm Elders, 14 Transcendent Stage Cultivators, and 49 True Element Stage Elders. But now, how many people are supporting Eldest Miss? Elder Danqing was severely injured, and it's still a question whether he can recover. Elder Jean Yin was captured alive, and if we don't hand over the Dao carrying item with 100 Daoist rhymes, we won't be able to keep our lives. Among the remaining Transcendent Stage Elders, Old He, Old Lu, and Old Zhou died in battle, and Old Fei escaped. Only Yen Yu and Elder Su Tong are left. As for the true element stage elders, needless to say, 9 of them died in battle, and 4 of them escaped. Now, only the few of us are still following Eldest Mississippi. Could it be that Eldest Miss has to personally see us all killed by the North Moon Peak's experts before she can face reality? Xing Lian, shut up. Have you forgotten the oath that you swore in front of Eldest Miss? Su Tong shouted sternly. If I had forgotten the oath that I swore in front of Eldest Miss, I wouldn't have accompanied Eldest Miss until now. But in fact, Eldest Miss, you know very well that we have no hope of resisting the North Moon Peak. Look at us, the only Endless Realm Elder, Elder Jean, has been captured alive, and we're the only transcendent and true element stage elders left. What about the North Moon Peak? Not to mention the entire North Moon Peak's Golden Core stage experts, there are more than a dozen Endless Realm experts, and nearly 100 transcendent and true element stage experts. Even if the Divine Grace Merchant Guild united to resist the North Moon Peak, we won't be able to escape the fate of being crushed into powder. Moreover, how many experts of the Divine Grace Merchant Guild are willing to listen to Eldest Miss? 1/3? 1/4? Or even less? At this point, Xing Lian couldn't help but sigh. First, young miss, we have to recognize the reality. Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce can no longer withstand North Moon Peak suppression. Otherwise, in at most half a year, all of us will die for Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. First, young miss doesn't want to see such a tragic scene happen before completely waking up. Chapter 469. Xing Lian's words caused everyone present to fall silent. Although his words sounded unreasonable, he had exposed the cruel truth in front of everyone. That was right. What was the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce compared to the North Moon Peak? Right now, the North Moon Peak was worried that the Hidden Sword Venerable was suppressing them, so they didn't dare to act recklessly. But even so, how long could the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce last by relying on such a slow method? So, it has really come to this. Su Zhao's face was filled with disappointment. Eldest Miss, Su Tong looked at Su Xiao and a trace of worry flashed across her face. Although she was very dissatisfied with Xing Lian's way of saying these words without leaving any leeway, she had to admit that what he said was the truth. Moreover, she knew Xing Lian's character. He was not the kind of person who was afraid of death and would live an ignoble life. Then, what can we do next? I think, Xing Lian was about to say something when a voice suddenly came from outside. Sister, why don't you ask Master for help? Immediately after, Su Yuan, who was clean and tidy, walked in from outside the hall. He looked extraordinarily handsome. Brother. Seeing Su Yuan, who looked no different from an ordinary person, Su Zhao's originally gloomy face suddenly broke into a smile. Even though everything that had happened to the Divine Grace Merchant Guild during this period of time had caused her to frown, the fact that Su Yuan had regained his consciousness made her feel happy from the bottom of her heart. Young Master. The others in the hall also nodded at Su Yuan. As the only male descendant of the Su family, by right, he should be the best successor of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Unfortunately, he had been harmed when he was young and his sanity had been damaged. That was why the position of Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce's president had fallen to Su Xiao. But now, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce could not survive. Even if he, the young master, recovered at the crucial moment, there was no point. Greetings, uncles. Su Yuan bowed slightly to the people around him. He looked very polite. Brother, it's not that we don't want to ask your master for help. It's just that your master is just an outsider. It's not good for him to interfere with the business of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Secondly, he's only in the transcendent state. Even if he's willing to help, what can he do for the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce? No matter what, he helped you regain your sanity. He's the benefactor of the Su family. Under such circumstances, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce is in a precarious situation. I really don't want to implicate him and bring death to him. Su Xiao looked at Su Yuan. Although she was pleased that he cared about the Chamber of Commerce's business, she could only patiently explain. Although Master is a transcendent elite, according to my understanding of Master, his true ability is far beyond that of an ordinary transcendent elite. If you are really willing to ask Master for help, I believe that Master will definitely be able to help the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce get through this difficult situation. Apparently, Xiao was Su Yuan's of the heavens. That's impossible. Su Xiao shook her head. Currently, the North Moon Peak is very powerful. Other than the Aurora Peak and the Hidden Sword Peak where the sect leader is, no other peak can go against them. Even if your master's combat power is far beyond his current state and can even stand shoulder to shoulder with the Golden Core State cultivators, he still can't do anything against the North Moon Peak. After all, other than the Peak Master, the North Moon Peak has several Golden Core State guests, as well as many never-ending State and Transcendent State Elders. At this point, she didn't continue. Hearing Su Xiao say that even a Golden Core State cultivator could not help the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, Su Yuan could not help but be dumbfounded. Alright, brother, you're so considerate. When Su Xiao said this, a trace of bitterness appeared on his face. Xing Lian's words make sense. Right now, the North Moon Peak that is at its peak is much stronger than the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce that is on the decline. If we continue to resist, we will indeed die. Originally, I did not wish for the foundation that Father gave me to decline in my hands, but now it seems, the choice is not in my hands at all. If I continue to stubbornly persist like this, in the end, I will only cause you and the other uncles to lose their lives in vain. Young mistress, a trace of sorrow flashed across Su Tong's eyes. The remaining Xing Lian and the group of True Energy Realm cultivators heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. According to young mistress's words, she was obviously planning to submit to one of the Hidden Sword sect's factions. This way, they would finally not have to live such a precarious life in fear. Even if they might lose the good treatment and benefits they currently had, compared to losing their lives, the loss of the resources that they could use to their advantage was not unacceptable. Then, young mistress, what do you plan to do? Do we choose the Aurora Peak or the Hidden Sword Peak of the sect leader's faction? At this time, the Transcendent State Elder asked softly. Su Xiao glanced at him. Obviously, this Transcendent State Elder who was loyal and devoted to her father had already thought of giving up. The situation was hopeless. The North Moon Peak has persecuted our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce many times. Quite a few of our senior elders and elders have died in their hands. Even if I were to surrender, I would definitely not surrender to them so easily. As for the Hidden Sword Peak, they are fellow disciples of the Hidden Sword sect. In order to swallow our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, they actually watched as the North Moon Peak persecuted our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce without doing anything. Such a heartless and unjust peak, I would similarly not choose them, even if they hold the greatest reputation. Then, young mistress, you choose the Aurora Peak. Su Xiao bit her lips. It can only be the Aurora Peak. Behind the Aurora Peak is also a powerful chaos organization. Their influence is not weak. If we choose them, our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce will have a trace of hope to seek revenge on Du Longzi and Mu Yinglong of the North Moon Peak in the future. Then, I will go and contact the Aurora Peak now. When the Peak Master of the Aurora Peak, Lu Xiangyang, recruited us, he left behind a mother-son communication jade talisman. Su Tong said. Su Xiao nodded weakly. Remember, our condition is that they must rescue Elder Jin Yin. I understand. Su Tong nodded seriously and quickly took out a communication jade talisman. After the message was sent out, they waited quietly. Su Xiao glanced at the people present who were obviously more relaxed after the message was sent out. In the end, she could only sigh. Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, could they not escape the fate of being annexed in the end? After waiting for less than an hour, the communication jade talisman in Su Tong's hand vibrated slightly. In the next moment, she had already taken out the jade talisman. After reading the message on it, she turned to Su Xiao. "Young mistress, the people from the Aurora Peak have replied. They have agreed to our request and will take action 3 days later to rescue Elder Jin Yin. They have also promised to let us follow the Aurora Peak. However, their request is that the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce has to give 200 Taoist rhymes to the Aurora Peak. Furthermore, the Aurora Peak has to send one person to the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. This person will not affect the internal operations of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce but will have the right to appoint and dismiss any position." Speaking of this, her tone paused slightly. "Including you, young mistress, as the president." Hearing this, Su Xiao instantly laughed bitterly. "At least they didn't take away our president position immediately. Isn't that pretty good?" After a moment, she said again, "Then, the safety of the people in the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Once the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce encounters any problems or troubles, the Aurora Peak will have full authority to solve it. They are treating the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce as a money-making tool." Su Xiao saw the essence of it at a glance. Su Tong, Xing Lian, and the rest fell silent and did not say anything. After a while, Su Xiao said, "Forget it. This is already the best ending. At least we are still useful. If we are useful, I believe the Aurora Peak will not abandon us so easily. Then, let's agree to their request. 3 days later, I need to see them rescue Elder Jin Yin with my own eyes. As long as they rescue Elder Jin Yin, I can give them whatever they want, be it the Taoist item or the right to appoint personnel in the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Alright, I will reply to the Aurora Peak now." Su Yuan, who was at the side, saw this and quickly said, "Sister, are we really not going to discuss this with my master? Who knows, he might have a way." Su Xiao shook her head. "I am very grateful that your master was able to restore your consciousness and teach you cultivation. However, this is not something that a transcendent realm cultivator can easily intervene in. Elder Danqing and Elder Jin Yin are the best examples. Not to mention, there is also the example of Elder Lu, Elder Zhou, and Elder He. Let's not harm him." After saying this, she turned to Su Tong. "Just reply to Peak Master Lu of the Aurora Peak like this." "Yes, Mississippi." Su Yuan saw that Su Xiao seemed to have made up her mind and could not be dissuaded. He could not help but feel anxious. He quickly turned around and left the hall. However, at this moment, Su Xiao was in a daze because she had to personally hand over the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. She did not notice Su Yuan's abnormality and allowed him to run out. After leaving the hall, Su Yuan immediately went to Tsing Hui's courtyard and shouted, "Master, Master, are you here?" Hearing Su Yuan's shout, the Green Netherworld Realm Guard walked out immediately. "Young Master, are you Sun Yuqing?" Senior Yuqing went to the Emerald Swamp and is cultivating there. He has been gone for more than a month now. A month? Then, did Master say when he would be back? This. I don't know. This is troublesome. Su Yuan's heart was filled with anxiety. In the end, he could only look at the Green Netherworld Realm Guard. "Guard Big Brother, can you bring me to the Emerald Swamp? I have something important to tell Master. If I can't let Master know about this, I'm afraid our Divine Grace Merchant Association will be in danger of being destroyed." "What?" The Green Netherworld Realm Guard was shocked. He was sent by Su Tong to listen to Tsing Hui's orders. Naturally, he was a trustworthy subordinate. He had a strong sense of belonging to the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Now that he heard that the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce was in danger of being destroyed, he could not help but worry. Then what should we do? We can only find Master now. Only by finding Master can we save the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, guard, please bring me to the Emerald Swamp." Hearing this, the green netherworld realm guard hesitated for a moment. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "All right, young master, I will bring you there now. Our divine grace chamber of commerce has withstood the pressure of the North Moon Peak for so long. One day, we will hold on until the hidden sword venerable comes out of seclusion. At that time, all the members of the divine grace chamber of commerce who have sacrificed themselves in these years will be able to be avenged. Tsinghui can finally sweep across the hidden sword continent openly. I beg for a wave of 666 recommendations for Tsinghui." Chapter 470. 3 days passed by quickly. On the morning of the third day, Su Xiao brought Su Tong, Xing Lian, and another transcendent realm expert, Si Tongzhen, to the mountain where Du Longzi was. Everyone knew that Du Longzi was a guest of the North Moon Peak. However, he had disguised himself as a group of bandits and killed the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce's caravan on the way. Not only had he captured Elder Jin Yin in the caravan, but many of the Green Hell Realm, Vision Sage Realm, and True Energy Realm experts who were guarding the caravan had also suffered heavy losses. However, because Du Longzi had concealed his appearance, he openly occupied a mountain over 4,000 kilometers away from the Hidden Sword sect and flaunted his prowess. In addition, the Hidden Sword Peak was unwilling to offend the North Moon Peak, so they actually turned a blind eye to this matter. As a result, even though the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce had the intention to report to the Hidden Sword sect, they still couldn't get the support of the Hidden Sword sect. In the end, strength. Other than those Tao-carrying items, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce didn't have anything that was worth the risk of offending the North Moon Peak. As for those Tao-carrying items, in the eyes of the Hidden Sword Peak, as long as they helped the North Moon Peak to force the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce would naturally obediently offer up many Tao-carrying items to seek the protection of the Hidden Sword Peak. The group led by Su Xiao quickly arrived at the Poison Dragon Peak where Du Longzi was. This peak was originally a nameless peak. It was named the Poison Dragon Peak because Du Longzi had temporarily stayed here. The main purpose of Du Longzi's stay here was to obtain the 200 Dao Rhyme points in the hands of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Peak Master Lu. At the foot of the Poison Dragon Peak, Su Xiao and the others had only waited here for a short while when they saw a group of people flying over. Soon, they landed in front of Su Xiao and the others. The leader was Lu Xiangyang. Besides LV Xiangyang, Mou and Zhuang Qiansheng were both Golden Core Realm experts that traveled with him as well. Coupled with the 6 Eternal Realm experts that traveled with him, their lineup was so formidable that it caused Su Tong, Xing Lian, Si Tongzhen, and the others to sigh endlessly. Compared to the Aurora Peak, their Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce was much weaker. Miss Su, I'm very happy that you've made the right choice. It won't be long before you realize that all the problems that your Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce is facing will be quickly resolved. LV Xiangyang was overjoyed at the thought of receiving 200 Daoist rhymes. He laughed heartily. I'll have to trouble Peak Master Lu in a while. As long as Peak Master Lu is able to rescue our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce's Doyen Jin Yin, our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce will definitely follow Aurora Peak's lead from today onwards. Su Xiao said. Don't worry, all 3 of us Golden Core Realm experts have arrived together this time. So long as Du Longzi isn't a one-track-minded person, he'll know what choice he should make in the end. LV Xiangyang had a happy smile on his face. Let's wait and see. LV Xiangyang nodded. He didn't force Su Xiao and the rest to hand over the Daoist item now. Even though the Aurora Peak, North Moon Peak, and Hidden Sword Peak were all eyeing the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce covetously in trying to force them to hand over the 200 Daoist rhymes, there was still the Hidden Sword Venerable above them. If they really dared to kill and snatch the treasures, once the Hidden Sword Venerable was alerted, no one in the entire Hidden Sword continent would be able to withstand the anger of this Almighty. Even the North Moon Peak, who had the Heaven Dao as their backing, was no exception. Therefore, even if the North Moon Peak had already sent their guests to snatch the goods of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, they still had to disguise themselves and call themselves bandits. They didn't dare to snatch the goods openly. Otherwise, how could the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce survive until now? The group of more than 10 people quickly went up the Poison Dragon Peak. On the Poison Dragon Peak, Du Longzi had obviously received the news. However, as LV Xianyang and the rest had already surrounded him, Du Longzi didn't escape immediately. Instead, he wore a mask and walked down from the courtyard that had been built not long ago. He stared coldly at LV Xianyang. "Peak Master LV, what do you mean by this? Do you want to snatch food from the tiger's mouth? Aren't you afraid that you'll use too much force and break your front teeth? Whether or not my front teeth will break is not up to you." LV Xianyang looked at Du Longzi and said with a faint smile. "Alright, since I've already appeared here, you should understand what kind of choice the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce has made. Our peaks have already reached a tacit agreement beforehand. We'll compete together and rely on our own methods. Now that the victor has been decided, you should obediently hand over the people and end this matter. Otherwise, don't blame us for not giving you any face and bullying you with numbers." Du Longzi glanced at Fu Yu and Zhuang Qianxing behind LV Xianyang. His face was a little gloomy. "Peak Master LV, you should think about the consequences of your actions. The Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce is already in the bag of our Peak Master. Now that you've intercepted us halfway, have you thought about how to give our Peak Master an explanation?" "Explanation? If Ji Lianqing wants an explanation, let him come and ask me directly. As for you, you can't make this decision." LV Xianyang waved his hand, obviously not putting Du Longzi in his eyes. The conversation between the two sides was heard by Su Xiao and the others, but it made them feel quite uncomfortable. Whether it was the Aurora Peak or the North Moon Peak, in their hearts, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce had always been just a chess piece that they could need. Its life and death were all in their hands. As for the attitude of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce itself, there was no need to think about it at all. It was like a sheep being targeted by 3 fierce tigers. Its life and death had already been determined the moment it was targeted. The only difference was which tiger would eventually eat it. "Peak Master LV, do you really want to be enemies with our North Moon Peak? Don't forget that many of the people who support you are on our side. It's just a competition for resources. It's nothing more than relying on our own methods. Your North Moon Peak can't afford to lose, so you want to call your parents. I think even if you really ask the people behind you for help, they will definitely not bother to pay attention to you. Instead, they will question your ability and even turn to support the other peaks. Humph, they have invested so many resources in our North Moon Peak. Do you think they will give up so easily? If the investment and the benefits are not proportional, why can't they give up? After all, no one's resources come from the wind. The bigger the force, the more resources it needs, and the more intense the internal competition, isn't it?" LV Xianyang smiled faintly, as if victory was in his hands. However, Zhuang Qianxing seemed to have noticed something at this time and hurriedly whispered, "Peak Master, this Du Longzi is stalling for time." "Ha!" LV Xianyang's expression changed slightly, and then he thought of this point. He immediately shouted angrily, "Du Longzi, I'll give you 3 breaths of time to consider. Hand over the person immediately, or don't blame me for being merciless." "Ha, hand over the person. LV Xianyang, don't you think it's a little too late?" Du Longzi laughed loudly and flew backward. "What?" At this time, LV Xianyang also suddenly raised his head and looked towards the horizon. There, more than a dozen sword lights had already broken through the air at the fastest speed and would arrive in 10 breaths of time. "Damn it, attack!" LV Xianyang shouted, and the 2 Gold Core Realm experts and 6 Eternal Realm experts behind him attacked at the same time. However, Du Longzi himself was also a Gold Core Realm expert, and his status was not low. Almost at the moment when LV Xiangyang rushed forward, he had already taken out an item and threw it towards the ground. Immediately, circles of blue flowing light spread out, forming a light shield with a diameter of 30 meters, completely enveloping him and the small building behind him. LV Xiangyang, Zhuang Qiansheng, MOU, and the others used all their strength to attack the layer of blue flowing light. Although the blue flowing light shook violently, it did not break and shatter in the end. This is the blue nether flowing light shield. It can withstand the attacks of 10 gold core realm experts for 10 breaths of time. Damn it! Several gold core realm experts shouted angrily, and one by one, they used their strongest techniques. Under the extremely precise control of the power of the transformative realm, they continuously attacked the blue nether flowing light shield, causing the light shield to shake violently, as if it would completely disappear in the next moment. Unfortunately, it was as if, forever, it was just as if. No matter how the Aurora Peaks LV Xiangyang and the other 2 Golden Core stage experts and never-ending stage experts attacked, they were unable to break the blue sky flowing light mantle. After over a dozen breaths of time, the numerous experts from the North Moon Peak finally arrived. With the North Moon Peak's Peak Master, Mu Xingyi, leading the Gold Core Realm experts, Mu Yinglong, Cui Ji, and 8 Eternal Realm experts, quickly descended. The strength of the lineup was even greater than that of the Aurora Peak. LV Xiangyang, how dare you attack the people of the North Moon Peak? The North Moon Peak's Peak Master, Mu Xingyi, had not arrived alone, but his angry roar had already swept out. People of the North Moon Peak. I don't know anything about the people of the North Moon Peak. I only know that there are bandits lurking on this mountain peak who attacked the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Why, could it be that these bandits are the people of the North Moon Peak? If that's the case, then I have to have a good talk with the Hidden Sword Venerable. Since when did the Hidden Sword sect allow internal strife within the sect? LV Xiangyang sneered. Behind Mu Sheng, Cui Ji's complexion changed slightly. Although everyone knew the truth, he still had to maintain his reputation. Therefore, Cui Ji quickly tried to remedy the situation. We also heard that there is a group of bandits here. So, we came here to subdue them. Our North Moon Peak has already intervened in this matter. Peak Master LV, please don't interfere. Please return. Heh, since you said you are here to exterminate bandits, then why don't you let me see how you are going to exterminate them? Cui Ji's expression turned cold. Why, does my North Moon Peak have to let your Aurora Peak dictate what to do? My North Moon Peak's ability is extremely powerful and not easy to control. Naturally, I don't wish for outsiders to be present. Otherwise, if I lose control of my killing move and injure everyone of the Aurora Peak, it would be troublesome. In the end, LV Xiangyang was only flaunting his sharp tongue. Although the Aurora Peak was strong, it was still weaker than the North Moon Peak. Seeing that the North Moon Peak was stronger this time, although LV Xiangyang was unwilling, he could only let out a cold snort and retreat for the time being. Peak Master LV, our Prime Elder Jin Yin is still inside. Seeing that LV Xiangyang actually intended to turn and leave, Su Xiao hurriedly went forward and said. LV Xiangyang's face darkened, and he said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, since your Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce intends to join our Aurora Peak, we will not let this matter go so easily. We will definitely think of a way to rescue your Prime Elder Jin Yin in the future." When the people of the North Moon Peak heard LV Xiangyang's words, they immediately shouted, "It seems that there are other accomplices on this mountain besides this person. This person is a Golden Core Realm cultivator, and it was not easy for him to cultivate to the Golden Core Realm. If he can surrender to us, we can still give him a chance to redeem himself. As for the other people on the mountain, they must have done many evil deeds. Then, we will not leave any one of them alive and kill them all." Obviously, their words were meant for Su Xiao to hear. There were no accomplices on the mountain, only Prime Elder Jin Yin of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. If the people of the North Moon Peak really pretended not to know and killed Prime Elder Jin Yin, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce would have nowhere to seek redress. For a moment, even though she knew that the North Moon Peak was forcing her, Su Xiao could not help but almost collapse. No. You can't do it. Mu Xingyi and the others had a cold smile on their faces. What are you waiting for? Do it, kill everyone on the mountain. Yes. Cui Ji, Mu Yinglong, and the others also shouted loudly. At this moment, an indifferent voice suddenly came from below the mountain. Is the Aurora Peak going to admit defeat just like this? I thought I would be lucky enough to be able to benefit from a fight between the Sandpiper and the clan. Chapter 471. Is Aurora Peak going to admit defeat just like that? I thought I would be able to reap the benefits from the fight between the Sandpiper and the clan. As the voice came from the foot of the mountain, two figures could be seen walking up the mountain path. The one who spoke was a slightly older man. Seeing this man, Su Xiao, Su Tong, and the rest were slightly stunned. They couldn't help but ask, Mr. Yuqing. It was Tsing Hui. When Su Xiao saw the young man behind Tsing Hui, her expression changed. She immediately panicked and said, Su Yuan, why are you here? Quick, it's dangerous here. Leave this place quickly. You are indeed a young hero. You are indeed the descendant of Su Hui's great sword sect. Since Su Yuan is here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Seeing Su Yuan, the Aurora Peak's Peak Master Mu Xingyi's eyes immediately lit up. Ting Lu, little brother Su Yuan's body is weak. He might be injured by our energy waves in the upcoming battle. Quickly bring him over and protect him well. Yes. An elder of the never-ending realm had already leaped up and pounced towards Su Yuan like a shooting star. Oh no. Little brother, be careful. Aunt Tong. Su Xiao turned pale with fright when she saw this scene. She hurriedly shouted. Without needing Su Xiao to say anything, Su Tong had already pounced forward in a futile attempt to stop the never-ending realm expert named Ting Lu. However, at the same time that Su Tong moved, another never-ending realm expert behind Mu Xingyi also made his move. Even though the never-ending realm expert's strength did not increase much compared to the transformative realm expert, the never-ending realm expert's energy recovery speed was more than 10 times faster than the transformative realm expert. They could completely maintain their strongest attack method and attack continuously. With this advantage, it was not difficult for them to stop Su Tong. The two of them brazenly struck each other in the air. The scattered energy was compressed into a chi explosion, creating a loud boom. They were evenly matched. Then, relying on the Undying Realm's energy recovery ability, they did not give Su Tong any chance to take a breather. That Undying Realm expert's attack had already arrived. Su Tong, who was unable to circulate all the true chi in her body to block, had no choice but to block with difficulty. She was repelled by this Undying Realm expert with a single strike. She could only watch as Ting Lu pounced towards Su Yuan. It was as though he was going to capture Su Yuan alive in the next moment and threaten the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce to make them submit completely. Peak Master Lu, I beg you, please save my brother. LV Xiangyang's expression changed. Seeing that it was no longer feasible to take over the Divine Grace Merchant Guild through the Golden Sound incident, he immediately shed all pretense of cordiality and said, I will help you stop them with the 100 Taoist rhythms item. Protect you and your brother. Peak Master Lu, you, hurry up and decide. LV Xiangyang growled. Although there was a distance between Su Yuan and the people of the North Moon Peak, to an Eternal Realm expert, this distance of 1,000 meters could be crossed in a few breaths. If he did not act in time, he might not be able to save Su Yuan from Ting Lu even with his Golden Core Realm cultivation. Clearly, Su Xiao was extremely angry, but seeing that Su Yuan was about to fall into Ting Lu's hands in the next moment, she had no choice but to say, I agree, you want to capture my disciple. Have you asked for my permission? Just as Su Xiao was about to agree to LV Xiangyang's extortionate conditions, Xing Hui's voice rang out from the crowd. Then, he took a step forward and stood in front of Su Yuan. Where did this brat come from? How dare you meddle in our North Moon Peak's business? Get lost. Ting Lu's eyes lit up when he saw Xing Hui standing in front of him. A giant snake shadow suddenly appeared behind him. It was like a true dragon that was about to transform into a human form. It let out a thunderous roar and directly swallowed Xing Hui, like a snake swallowing a whale. Ha! Xing Hui glanced at Ting Lu in front of him, then at the 7 Golden Core experts from the Aurora Peak and the North Moon Peak, and a series of Transcendent Realm experts. A faint smile appeared on his face. If he had only been in the Transcendent Realm, he would have had to consider carefully if he wanted to intervene in the battle between the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, the North Moon Peak, the Aurora Peak, and the Hidden Sword Peak. After all, no matter how strong he was at that time, he was at most equivalent to an ordinary Golden Core expert. The other party only needed to send 1 or 2 Golden Core experts and 1 or 2 Transcendent Realm experts to swarm him and defeat him easily. But now, the moment Su Yuan found him, he had finally completed the stabilization of the fusion reactor in his body and truly stepped into the Transcendent Realm. Although they were both in the Transcendent Realm, the true essence derived from the fusion reactor could not be injected into the jade pendant to form a protective talisman like ordinary true essence. It also did not have any other magical uses. However, in terms of destructive power, it was far more destructive than ordinary true essence experts. Now, even if all the Golden Core experts present swarmed him, he would not know the outcome of the battle, let alone a Golden Core expert. Boom! A round of bright light suddenly erupted behind Xing Hui, like a ball of burning true fire of the sun. In an instant, it lit up a radius of more than 10 kilometers, almost overshadowing the radiance of the great sun in the void. In the endless radiance and the scorching sun, the shadow of a golden crow spread its wings and soared, letting out a loud cry. It directly faced the shadow of the giant snake that was pouncing down. The moment the two collided, an even more violent air wave spread out from the compression, forming a circle of torrents that rolled in all directions. The most powerful impact swept up the shadow of the giant snake that was pouncing down from Ting Lu, taking advantage of the momentum to burn the shadow of the giant snake into ashes. This flame, the true fire of the sun, this is the true fire of the sun. Ting Lu let out a frightened roar and retreated rapidly, trying to escape the rolling flames that were burning the body of the golden crow. However, Xing Hui, who had gained the upper hand, did not intend to stop there. As he stepped forward, flames suddenly gathered in front of the claws of the golden crow shadow that was surrounded by raging flames. A giant sword that contained a violent and destructive aura gradually condensed. Even though the giant sword had not taken shape yet, the pressure that it exuded was far beyond the never-ending realm and even beyond the strength of a golden elixir realm expert. It had already made Ting Lu, as well as the people of the Aurora Peak and the North Moon Peak, who were confronting each other in the distance, pale. Oh no! This pressure, the strength of a golden elixir. He's a golden elixir realm expert. Ting Lu can't block this attack. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you attack the people of the North Moon Peak? The people of the North Moon Peak roared at the same time. As Golden Elixir realm experts, Cui Ji and Mu Yinglong roared at the same time and pounced at Xing Hui at full speed, vainly trying to stop Xing Hui's pursuit after Ting Lu was defeated. Unfortunately, even though they had overestimated the power contained in Xing Hui's Sword of the Glorious Sun, when the sword really chopped down, the destructive power contained in it still made everyone present turn pale with horror. Under the attack of the Sword of the Glorious Sun, the powerful body of Ting Lu, an expert of the never-ending realm, shattered inch by inch like snow exposed to the scorching sun, and then turned into ashes. The remaining flames continued to burn Ting Lu's body, as if they would turn him into ashes in the next second. Fortunately, Ting Lu had been in the never-ending realm for a long time, and he had many treasures with him. At the critical moment, he actually took out a pearl, which formed a special boundary that seemed to be immune to fire damage. He actually saved his life from the burning flames and escaped. The price he paid was that the pearl-like treasure was covered with cracks. Obviously, even if it was not destroyed, it was not far from it. Swoosh! At this time, Muing Long and Cui Ji also flew like flowing light to the side of Ting Lu, who had retreated some distance away. Seeing the cracked pearl in his hand, the two of them, who knew the origin of the pearl, could not help but be shocked. What a domineering attack, this power! Muing Long and Cui Ji's gazes towards Qing Su immediately turned solemn. Not only them, but the Aurora Peak experts of the Gold Elixir realm also had grave expressions. Tsing Hui's battle strength was not inferior to that of an expert of the Gold Elixir realm, especially the attack just now. In terms of power, it faintly surpassed the power of an ordinary expert of the Gold Elixir realm. Although it had not reached the level of an expert of the Gold Elixir realm, it was not far from it. Such a mysterious expert obviously belonged to Su Yuan, who was also on the side of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. They could not help but pay attention to him. Who are you? How dare you interfere in the internal affairs of the Hidden Sword Sect? Aren't you afraid that the Hidden Sword Sect will investigate and you will not have a good ending? Cui Ji looked at Tsing Hui in front of him, his eyes full of threat. At this time, Su Xiao, Su Tong, and the others, who were in shock, suddenly woke up. Although Tsing Hui had helped Su Yuan to recover his consciousness, they had already guessed that Tsing Hui's means were not bad. However, now that they saw that he was able to severely injure Ting Lu, who was at the Eternal Realm, with one blow, they were immediately surprised and happy. One by one, they quickly came to Tsing Hui's side. Mr. Yu Qing is the teacher of my brother, Su Yuan. He is also a guest invited by the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Now that Elder Ting Lu of the North Moon Peak is about to attack my brother, Mr. Yu Qing naturally has the right to fight back. Su Xiao quickly stepped forward and said in a deep voice. When she mentioned this, she looked at the North Moon Peak, Ting Lu, and the others with eyes full of anger. Miss Su Xiao, you're exaggerating. We were just afraid that if there was any conflict later, the energy fluctuations would hurt my little friend Su Yuan. That's why we wanted to protect him. We definitely didn't mean to hurt him. Cui Ji replied with a fake smile. Then, he glanced at Tsing Hui and said with a faint threat, I wonder where Mr. Yu Qing is from and where is his home. The Hidden Sword Continent is not very peaceful now. Bandits are running rampant. Mr. Yu Qing can enjoy a lifespan of thousands of years after cultivating to the Golden Core realm. Don't fall into a life and death crisis because of making the wrong choice and end up losing your young life in vain. You don't have to bother the North Moon Peak to ask about my origin. I came here this time because I was invited by my disciple, Su Yuan. He said that an elder of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce was captured by bandits. Under the clear sky, there is actually such a vicious and sinister person in the Hidden Sword Continent. He actually dared to openly attack the caravan formed by the upper echelons of the Hidden Sword Sect. He is really guilty. After Tsing Hui finished speaking, his gaze fell on Du Longzi. Then, as if ignoring Cui Ji and Muing Long's obstruction, he strode towards him. Are you that ferocious bandit? You dare to attack the internal chamber of commerce of the Hidden Sword Sect. Today, I will suppress the bandits on behalf of the Hidden Sword Sect and kill you on the spot as a warning to others. Chapter 472. Tsing Hui's speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he passed by Cui Ji and Muing Long. Before they could react, he had already arrived in front of Du Longzi. The golden crow above his head let out a long cry and suddenly tore down. The blazing grand sun true fire immediately boiled and burned. In an instant, the air within a radius of several thousand meters was heated up by more than 10 degrees. The temperature at the center of the golden crow's claws was enough to burn any divine weapon below the 10th level into ashes and forge it into molten iron. Be careful, the power of his battle physique is definitely at the divine level. Don't take it head on. A divine level Golden Crow battle physique. Damn it. There is no such powerhouse in the Hidden Sword continent. Even Xiao Rui, who is called the #1 genius of the Hidden Sword sect, can only condense the white tiger sacred physique of the Six Saints. Cui Ji and Mu Yinglong shouted and immediately turned to intercept Xing Hui. Ha ha ha, Cui Ji, Mu Yinglong, you two actually dare to stop me? It seems that your North Moon Peak and the Poison Dragon Peak have indeed colluded together. The North Moon Peak actually colluded with bandits to attack the caravan of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. What kind of crime is this? If all the forces in the Hidden Sword sect openly attack each other like this, then what is the point of the Hidden Sword sect's existence? It is better to just disband and everyone will fight for themselves from now on. Qing Su had attacked Du Longzi in order to bait Cui Ji and Mu Yinglong into pursuing him. Now that he saw the two of them charge over, he immediately laughed aloud and turned around. The true fire of the great sun condensed from the Golden Crow had already surged towards the two of them. That's not right. Du Longzi has just declared his allegiance to the North Moon Peak. Now, he is naturally a member of the North Moon Peak. You attacked the experts of the North Moon Peak, so we naturally have to stop you. Oh. So after killing the internal members of the Hidden Sword sect, as long as you join another sect, you will be able to get the protection of that sect. This method is very good. From now on, I will constantly find people to kill your disciples of the North Moon Peak and then join the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce one after another. How about that? When Cui Ji heard Xing Hui's threat, a trace of anger appeared on his face. What's the point of talking so much nonsense with him? This kid's origin is unknown. He's not a cultivator of our Hidden Sword continent, but he sneaked into our Hidden Sword sect. Obviously, he's up to no good. Let's kill him together as a warning to others. Mu Xingyi shouted. He then called Du Longzi to cooperate with Cui Ji, Mu Yinglong, and the others. They then rushed towards Xing Hui to kill him. The fact that such a powerful Golden Core cultivator had appeared in the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce had already made North Moon Peak and the others feel threatened. They had already made up their minds to kill the person in front of them even if there was a certain amount of gossip. They had to completely suppress the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce's resistance. Rumble. For Golden Core cultivators attacked at the same time. How mighty was their power? Especially when Mu Shengyi and the others used the power of the Golden Core. Its power was so strong that it could be said to be earth-shattering. As the flowing light broke through the sky, even though Xing Hui had the Golden Crow Divine Body use its most powerful move, the Eternal Resplendent Flame, which exploded into a terrifying blazing sun that illuminated all directions, it was still torn apart by the attacks of Mu Shengyi, Du Longzi, Cui Ji, Mu Yinglong, and the other experts. Amidst the scattered flames, the power of the Golden Core fiercely bombarded the Golden Crow Divine Body. Even though the Golden Crow Divine Body tried its best to dodge, it was still blasted apart and its light dimmed by more than half. Good, that's it. His divine body has been seriously injured by us. Everyone, let's kill him in one go. Seeing the dim light of Xing Hui's Golden Crow Divine Body, the eyes of Mu Shengyi and the others suddenly flickered. Seeing that Xing Hui was in danger, Su Xiao immediately asked the Peak Master of Polar Peak, Lu Xiangyang, for help. Peak Master Lu, I beg you to act quickly and save Mr. Yuqin. Otherwise, Mr. Yuqin will be in danger. LV Xiangyang glanced at Su Xiao, and a glint flashed in his eyes. He sneered, it seems that the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce has hidden a lot of secrets. There is actually such an expert hidden in the Chamber of Commerce. Even under the joint attack of the 4 North Moon Peak Golden Elixir Realm experts, he has not been defeated in such a short time. Such combat strength is not much inferior to that of a genius who has condensed a high-grade Golden Elixir Realm. Peak Master Lu, Su Xiao looked at Lu Xiangyang and suddenly understood something. Her face turned slightly pale. On the other hand, the Aurora Peak Golden Core expert, Fu Yu, said in a strange tone, Mr. Yu Qing of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce is showing his power. He is fighting against 4 Golden Core cultivators of the North Moon Peak alone. If he can win this battle, he will immediately become famous in the Hidden Sword Continent and become one of the top experts of the Hidden Sword Continent. This is the battle that will make Mr. Yu Qing famous. If we go up to help Mr. Yu Qing at this time and ruin Mr. Yu Qing's good fortune, what will we do if he comes to settle accounts with us afterwards? We are just the most ordinary Golden Core cultivators. We can't withstand the anger of Mr. Yu Qing, who has condensed a high-grade Golden Core. Although Su Xiao had long understood that the Aurora Peak was the same as the North Moon Peak, and their real purpose was to annex the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, she still couldn't help but burn with anger when she saw the faces of these people from the Aurora Peak. Sister, don't be angry. Just watch. Master's means are not what these people can imagine. At this time, Su Yuan, who came with Tsing Hui, spoke. His tone was full of strong confidence. But now, Mr. Yu Qing is obviously at a disadvantage. Even his divine body was almost destroyed by these people from the North Moon Peak. If this continues, eldest miss, wait a minute. Things may not be as bad as we think. Before Su Xiao could finish speaking, Su Tong, who had been watching the battlefield, saw something. Her eyes suddenly shot out a ray of light. What's wrong? Miss, look carefully. Not long ago, Mr. Yu Qing's Golden Crow divine body was attacked by the power of the 4 Golden Core experts. In an instant, he was severely injured. The light of his divine body dimmed by half, and its power was weakened to only 40 to 50%. However, even with only 40 to 50% of its power left, Mr. Yu Qing was still able to barely contend with the 4 Golden Core experts of the North Moon Peak. Moreover, as time passed, Mr. Yu Qing, who should have been getting weaker and weaker, did not fall into danger. Instead, the more he fought, the braver he became. Now, his divine body is actually, divine body. Su Xiao suddenly turned her head and looked at Tsing Hui's divine body. Although her cultivation was not high, as the president of the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce, her knowledge was not inferior to any Golden Core experts. After carefully looking at Tsing Hui's divine body for a moment, her eyes suddenly showed disbelief. Divine body. Divine body. His divine body was not weakened in a fierce battle, but became stronger and stronger. Now, it has almost recovered 60% of its power before he was injured. How? How could this be? Not only did Su Xiao and Su Tong discover this, but LV Xiangyang, Fu Yu, Zhuang Qiansheng, and the other Golden Core experts of the Aurora Peak also noticed Tsing Hui's abnormality at the same time. Their faces were full of surprise. What's going on? This kid, the more he fought, the braver he became. Not long ago, his Golden Crow divine body was almost destroyed by the joint attack of the 4 Golden Core experts of the North Moon Peak. However, under the pursuit of the 4 Golden Core experts of the North Moon Peak, not only did it not collapse, but it began to recover. It's indeed a little unbelievable. There are several possibilities for such a situation to occur. First, he cracked a part of his Golden Core, and relied on the terrifying power that erupted from cracking the Golden Core, allowing his originally weak divine body to be greatly replenished and erupt with a scene like the final radiance of the setting sun. Second, the foundation that he laid in the never-ending realm is incomparably solid, and the recovery speed of his true qi is much faster than that of ordinary people. Third, it's the divine art. He activated the divine art and used it to borrow power, but I didn't sense the sharp increase in his aura when the divine art was activated. Other than that, it's the recovery characteristic of the Son of Chaos. His recovery characteristic must be extremely high. 8th level. 9th level. Even 10th level. Fu Yu said in a deep voice, with a trace of seriousness in his expression. 10th level recovery characteristic. Both Zhuang Qiansheng and LV Xiangyang were instantly shocked. Logically speaking, as long as one's chaos level reached the 10th level, the recovery characteristic would be able to be upgraded to the 10th level. However, other than those low-level sons of chaos who were only a few levels and felt that they had no hope of growing in their lifetime, who would choose not to add a level of personal space. After all, even the convenience of a level 1 personal space was still enough to save one a lot of trouble. Other than personal space, a 10th level divine art was also indispensable, right? In this way, if one wanted to upgrade the recovery characteristic to the 10th level, one's chaos level definitely couldn't be lower than the 12th level. Moreover, apart from the recovery characteristic, in many cases, when one was clearly just a little bit away from a breakthrough but couldn't grasp the opportunity to break through, how many cultivators would be able to resist spending 1 or 2 chaos levels on their comprehension ability? With all these expenses, those who truly possessed the 10th level recovery characteristic were usually those top-level sons of chaos whose chaos level was above the 20th level. As for the sons of chaos above the 20th level, there were only 2 in the entire Hidden Sword continent. One was the supreme ruler of the Hidden Sword continent, the Hidden Sword Venerable. The other was the current sect master of the Hidden Sword sect, the peak master of the Hidden Sword peak, Sword Sage Xiao Luiying. Swish! LV Xiangyang directly threw an appraisal technique at Xing Hui. And then, a clay ox disappeared into the sea. There was no movement at all. My chaos level has reached the 16th level, but there's no reaction at all when I use an appraisal technique on him. His chaos level is either above the 18th level, or he's upgraded his appraisal technique to the 3rd level and above. LV Xiangyang said in a low voice. Other than some special personnel, no one would spend too much on the chaos level, the 18th level. It can't be wrong. This child must be a son of chaos above the 18th level. And in our Hidden Sword sect, we know most of the sons of chaos above the 10th level. Yuqing is very likely not a cultivator of the Hidden Sword continent, but has received a commission from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce to solve the problem for the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Floating path. Zhuang Qiansheng's eyes lit up slightly, and there was a hint of murderous intent on his face. Since he's not from the Hidden Sword continent, does that mean we don't have to care about the rules of the Hidden Sword sect at all? We can attack together, capture and kill him, and force out the chaos formula from him. Zhuang Qiansheng's words moved LV Xiangyang in floating path. A son of chaos of the 18th level. If they could force out such a chaos formula, that would definitely be the profit of hundreds of Daoist rhymes. Moreover, the 18th level of chaos was just their guess. If Yuqing's true chaos level was not only the 18th level but the 20th level, that would be the profit of more than 200 Daoist rhymes, which was equivalent to the entire Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. For a moment, the people of Aurora Peak became restless. Chapter 473. Peak Master. Greed flashed in Mou's eyes. Let's wait and see. It's best if we can benefit from the fight between the Sandpiper and the clam. LV Xiangyang waved his hand and slightly suppressed the thoughts of Mou and Zhuang Qiansheng. Mou and Zhuang Qiansheng looked at Xing Hui, who was still full of battle strength, and nodded slightly, but they were not afraid. The man named Yuqing in front of them might have a high cultivation base, and relying on his powerful recovery ability, he was not inferior to an expert who had cultivated a high-grade golden core. But don't forget, other than many golden core experts, there were also many endless realm, transformative realm, and true energy realm experts on their side. From the prominent divine stage onwards, the gap between the strong and the weak was not obvious. The main difference between the golden core stage and the prominent divine stage was that they were rich and had many methods. Each of them had many life-saving treasures and did not have to worry about the exhaustion of their true energy. It was because of this that they had a significant advantage when facing a prominent divine stage expert. Even if they did not use the power of the golden core, they could easily kill a prominent divine stage expert just by relying on the advantage brought by the divine weapons and the many battle techniques they cultivated. But this did not mean that a golden core stage expert could ignore the attacks of a prominent divine stage expert. In the case of a sneak attack, a prominent divine stage expert could even kill a golden core stage expert. If the prominent divine stage was already like this, then there was no need to mention the true energy realm, transformative realm, or even endless realm, which were stronger than the prominent divine stage. If the people of Aurora Peak swarmed up, even if Tsing Hui had the ability to fight against 4 golden core stage experts, the situation of the battle would immediately be reversed. On the battlefield, the people of North Moon Peak clearly understood the situation they were in. Seeing Tsing Hui become more and more powerful as the battle went on, they had already guessed that Tsing Hui's recovery ability must be extraordinary. At that moment, North Moon Peak's Peak Master, Mu Xingyi, did not care about bullying with numbers and shouted to the Endless Realm and Transformative Realm experts who came with them, "What are you waiting for? Attack! Kill this madman who dares to challenge the dignity of my North Moon Peak." 8 never-ending stage experts had come with Mu Xingyi, and only 4 transformative stage experts. However, the fact that these 4 transformative stage experts were able to help them in battle showed how extraordinary they were. 2 of them had condensed a saint-grade battle body, while the other 2 did not. With the help of some unique treasures, their battle bodies possessed the power of a pseudo-saint-grade battle body, just like the Hunyuan Heaven Sect's Grand Elder Qin Zhen. The power of these 12 experts was not the slightest bit inferior to that of 3 or 4 gold core experts. In an instant, the Golden Crow divine body, which had recovered some of its vitality, was in imminent danger. It was no longer able to replenish its vitality with ease. Despicable! Mu Xingyi, for better or for worse, you are the Peak Master of the North Moon Peak, as well as people with status. Yet, you actually dare to bully someone with numbers. Seeing this scene, many cultivators from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce started to curse. Among them, Su Xiao ordered, "Su Tong, hurry up and help Mr. Yuqing." Yes. After receiving the order, Su Tong and the others were about to step forward. However, at this moment, under LV Xiangyang's signal, MOU walked over with 3 never-ending realm experts. The battle between more than 10 never-ending realm and golden core realm experts is extremely grand. The energy fluctuations produced are also not to be underestimated. In order to prevent President Su Xiao from having no one to protect him, why don't we protect President Su Xiao? What do you want? Su Tong, Xing Lian, Si Tongzhen and the others hurriedly surrounded Su Xiao and Su Yuan to protect them. Nothing, we're just afraid that you won't have anyone to protect you, so we want to help you. Floater shrugged and said. Su Xiao immediately understood MOU, LV Xianyang and the others' intentions, and was immediately shocked and angry. You're actually working with the North Moon Peak to deal with my Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce? President Su Xiao, what are you talking about? Strictly speaking, our Aurora Peak, North Moon Peak, and your Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce are all members of the Hidden Sword sect, so we're natural allies. That Yuqing obviously comes from other continents. Who knows why he lurked in our Hidden Sword continent? Now, let's let the North Moon Peak teach him a lesson and let him understand that the Hidden Sword continent's matters are not something he can easily interfere with. Naturally, he'll be honest. Even if he has any tricks up his sleeve, he'll have to carefully consider the consequences of offending our Hidden Sword sect, right? I'm thinking for the long term of our Hidden Sword sect. Su Xiao looked at MOU, who shamelessly said these words, and her heart was filled with anger. In addition to her anger, her heart was also filled with regret. Mr. Yuqing had already vaguely indicated to her more than once that he had the ability to save the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, but she saw that Mr. Yuqing had only shown the aura of the transcendent stage, so she was full of distrust towards him. In the end, she chose Aurora Peak, which was obviously also here to annex the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Now, she could have borrowed Mr. Yuqing's ability to reverse the bad situation of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, but she made a wrong choice and ended up in this situation. Now, she, Su Tong, Xing Lian, Si Tongjian, and her brother Su Yuan were all here. Once Mr. Yuqing was defeated, these people would fall into the hands of the North Moon Peak or Aurora Peak. The Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce would be completely consigned to eternal damnation, and there would be no hope of a comeback. Sister, we have to have confidence in my master. Su Yuan, who was on the side, seemed to see Su Zhao's guilt, regret, and self-blame. He stepped forward to hold her hand and encouraged her. Little Yuan, Su Zhao looked at Su Yuan beside her, and a trace of pain flashed across her eyes. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. It's all my fault for being too willful, so much so that I can't even believe your words. If I had listened to you and asked Mr. Yuqing to help, our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce wouldn't have fallen into such a passive situation today. With Mr. Yuqing, Du Longzi is nothing at all. He can easily defeat Du Longzi and rescue Elder Jin Yin. Sister, don't worry, things haven't reached the final step. Who knows what will happen? Su Yuan said. Su Tong glanced at Su Yuan, but felt that he was blindly optimistic. It's no use. Originally, when he was fighting against 4 golden elixir experts, Mr. Yuqing relied on the advantage of his body movement to retreat as he fought, and he barely recovered 60% of the power of the Golden Crow Divine Body. But now, with 4 golden elixir experts, plus 12 never-ending realm and transformative realm experts, he can't be as relaxed as before. In just a short moment, his Golden Crow Divine Body has been hit several times, and its power has dropped from 60% to 40% now. According to the estimation that the weaker the Divine Body, the more difficult the situation is. If this continues, Mr. Yuqing's Golden Crow Divine Body will be completely destroyed in a few breaths' time. Su Yuan glanced at Xing Hui, who was fighting fiercely with the 16 experts on the battlefield. After a while, he said firmly, I believe in Master. Sometimes, you can't rely on trust to turn the situation around. Young mistress, young master, we have to prepare. When the time comes, we will do our best to protect you and break out of the encirclement. It doesn't matter if we are trapped here, but the 2 of you are the direct bloodline of the Su Hui sword sect. As long as the 2 of you are still alive, our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce will not be completely destroyed. Si Tongjian stepped forward, his expression solemn. He was already prepared to sacrifice himself in order to protect Su Yuan and Su Zhao. Elder Si, Su Zhao's face was filled with pain, and her eyes were filled with tears. It's my fault. Si Tongjian shook his head, and then glanced at Xing Hui, who was fighting fiercely. In just a short moment, Xing Hui's Golden Crow Divine Body was hit by another never-ending realm expert, and a violent explosion occurred. Large amounts of flames sputtered out, and while slightly forcing the never-ending realm and golden elixir experts to retreat, the light of the Divine Body dimmed again. Alright, Mr. Yuqing can't hold on any longer. Prepare to break out. Wait, let's wait and see. I believe in Master. Su Yuan stared at Xing Hui. There was a part of Xing Hui's consciousness in his consciousness, and under the influence of this part of his consciousness, he understood Xing Hui's strength better than anyone else. Although to outsiders, Xing Hui was already at the end of his rope, he knew that this was not his master's limit. Young Master Su Yuan, Si Tongjian opened his mouth and was about to persuade him. But at this moment, Xing Hui's Golden Crow Divine Body, which was exuding endless power, suddenly returned to his body. In its place was a powerful battle body hidden in the clouds, filled with a mysterious aura. Seeing this scene, Si Tongjian's eyes widened. Torch Dragon Battle Body. Torch Dragon Battle Body. This is the Torch Dragon Battle Body. Su Tong couldn't help but exclaim. By now, Qing Su's seraphic dragon physique had already clashed with the people of the North Moon Peak. The seraphic dragon physique might not have been able to match the Golden Crow physique in terms of attack and destruction, but with special abilities like the Great Sun True Spirit and Light Sense Deprivation, it completely surpassed the Golden Crow physique in terms of entanglement and defense. The Grand Sun True Spirit could make him immune to a lot of damage and could also absorb fire attribute damage to heal himself, making his recovery ability even stronger. Light Sense Deprivation, on the other hand, could affect the cultivators surrounding him when he was in danger, thus allowing him to break out of the encirclement and resolve the crisis. As Tsing Hui manifested his Torch Dragon Divine Body, although he was no longer able to fight back, the 4 Golden Core experts of the North Moon Peak, the 12 Eternal Realm experts, and the Transcendent Realm experts couldn't do anything to him for the time being. Obviously, the two sides would be in a stalemate before the Torch Dragon Divine Body's power was exhausted. To be able to move freely under the encirclement of 16 experts, this is definitely a battle body at the Divine Body level. This Yuqing actually has 2 Divine Bodies. It's incredible. Zhuang Qianqing of the Aurora Peak couldn't help but gasp when he saw the Torch Dragon Divine Body that even the 16 experts couldn't do anything to. So what if he has 2 Divine Bodies? This Torch Dragon Divine Body is obviously only good for defense, and it won't be long before this Torch Dragon Divine Body is defeated by the 16 experts of the North Moon Peak. He's just putting up a last-ditch struggle. LV Xiangyang snorted coldly. It's true that he's putting up a last-ditch struggle, but don't forget Yuqing's powerful recovery ability. If he can rely on the power of the Torch Dragon Divine Body to hold on for half an hour, even if his Golden Crow Divine Body can't be fully recovered, I'm afraid it will be able to recover 70 to 80% of its power. By then, he might be able to fight against the people of the North Moon Peak. On the floating path. If the floating path could see this, so could the people of the North Moon Peak. Seeing that Tsing Hui didn't want to fight them head-on at all, but just kept pestering them, Cui Ji immediately shouted. He manifested the Torch Dragon Divine Body in order to buy time for his Golden Crow Divine Body to recover. We can't let his Golden Crow Divine Body recover. Everyone, don't hold back anymore. Use the Divine Technique and go all out to destroy his 2 Divine Bodies. Cui Ji's words immediately made everyone nod at the same time. For a moment, the aura of the Divine Technique emerged from 10 of the 16 experts at the same time, and the power of the North Moon Peak skyrocketed. Chapter 474. The Divine Technique could raise the level of the practitioner. However, just like how the Divine Technique could not produce a battle form in the Green Hell Realm, the Divine Technique of the Gold Core Realm could not produce remarkable abilities out of nothing for the practitioner. It seemed that the so-called growth ability of the Divine Technique was only limited to the total amount of energy. Even though they did not derive any divine ability, the attacks of the few Golden Core stage experts became even fiercer as they possessed the boundless true essence that only divine ability stage experts possessed. Time and time again, their full-strength attacks were blasted out with a bang under the control of true essence at the transformative stage. They were like numerous roaring torrents that carried an unstoppable force that completely drowned all the living beings before them. Under this level of attack, even though the Great Sun True Spirit that Tsing Hui had transformed into could be immune to a large amount of damage, the remaining 20 to 30% was still enough to cause serious damage to the Torch Dragon Divine Body. If it were not for the fact that the Torch Dragon Divine Body could deprive the Torch Dragon Divine Body of its light perception, this round of attacks from the several Gold Core Realm experts was enough to completely destroy his Torch Dragon Divine Body. However, as the Peak Master of the Aurora Peak, Lu Xiangyang, had said, if he kept defending, he would definitely lose. Finally, after holding on for more than 20 breaths, the Torch Dragon Divine Body was finally seized by Mu Xingyi. The battle form that was so huge and solid that it was like a giant attacked with a loud bang. A terrifying power erupted on the Torch Dragon Divine Body. Even though it had transformed into the Great Sun True Spirit at the first moment, the Torch Dragon Divine Body, that had dimmed to only 40%, was still instantly crippled. As a result, Tsing-Hui had no choice but to withdraw it into his body to prevent it from collapsing and dispersing. It's over. Today is the day you die. After finally dispersing Tsing-Hui's strange and mysterious, torch dragon divine body, Mu Xingyi could not help but laugh heartily. Yes, it's over. The torch dragon divine body was defeated. Although Tsing-Hui's face turned slightly pale, his spirit had long become incomparably tough under the tempering of the sword intent and the nine heavens astral wind. Coupled with the fact that he had been tortured by the sixth revolution sword chi of the broken sword, even though his divine body was almost destroyed, he still managed to withstand the pain. Now, your divine technique should be about done. So, it's my turn. Tsing-Hui's gaze swept across the 16 people one by one. Among the 16 people, there were 10 whose chaos level was level 10 and above. If he was not wrong, after a few breaths of time, the time limit for those who were only level 1 divine arts should be up. Now that the warm-up is over, let the battle of life and death officially begin. As soon as Tsing-Hui finished speaking, the 7 blazing suns rose into the sky. Vast and mighty radiance and terrifying heat radiated from the void, quickly forming a blazing domain that covered an area of several kilometers. Great sun divine palaces sect protecting immortal technique, 10 suns burning the heavens. Basically at the same time as he used the immortal technique of the 10 suns, Qing Su's golden crow physique suddenly appeared. A scorching presence radiated from the golden crow physique. However, Mu Xingyi, Cui Ji, Mu Yinglong, Du Longzi, and the others, who were still a little nervous after hearing Tsing-Hui's words, laughed at the same time when they saw that Tsing-Hui's golden crow divine body had recovered less than 80%. I thought your divine body had recovered to its peak state, but it turns out that it still hasn't recovered. Even when your golden crow divine body was at its peak, you could barely contend with us 4 Jindan stage experts. Now, there are not only 4 Jindan stage experts on our North Moon Peak, but the others are also attacking at the same time. Their battle strength is not weaker than the joint attack of 7 Jindan stage experts. I'd like to see how long you can maintain this arrogant attitude. You will see. As soon as Tsing-Hui finished speaking, the aura of the divine technique appeared on his body. In the next moment, the golden crow divine body that had only recovered 80% suddenly rose to its peak state. At the same time, the blazing flames emitted from the golden crow divine body also soared in power, and the terrifying heat instantly caused the surrounding several kilometers to become dry and dry. Almost at the same time that Tsing-Hui used the divine technique, the fusion reactor that had just formed in his body began to shrink. With almost no need to worry, a huge amount of energy was crazily poured into it, causing the light inside the reactor to burst out with a sun-like radiance. It seemed that at this moment, the fusion reactor was no longer a simple reactor, but the incarnation of a real sun. A blazing sun that continued to fuse and would never be extinguished. The so-called increase in cultivation of the divine technique was, in fact, endlessly bestowing energy to the cultivator, and could even help the cultivator complete a qualitative change in energy. And the Jindan stage required the accumulation of energy. Roar! A loud and clear chant came out from the mouth of the golden crow divine body. As the blazing sun that would never be extinguished in Tsing-Hui's body shrank and expanded, a terrifying torrent that was several times stronger than before gushed out from it, instantly filling the golden crow divine body. Jindan eruption. This was the true eruption of the Jindan. This was the power of the great sun Jindan eruption. With the help of this power, the flames on the golden crow divine body suddenly doubled, and then with an incredible speed, it brazenly tore down at Du Longzi, who was being treated as a bandit. As it tore out, it was as if there were countless streams of light shooting out from the void. The fierce collision and friction between the flames formed a violent lightning in the void, and the power of this strike made Du Longzi, who bore the brunt of it, turn pale. This power, this is, eruption of the Jindan. This is the true eruption of the Jindan. Moreover, the power of this Jindan has definitely reached the level of the peerless rank. The power of a peerless rank Jindan. The power of a peerless rank Jindan is comparable to the power of a minor divine ability. It is definitely not something that an ordinary Jindan stage expert can block. Not good, Du Longzi, quickly retreat. Bastard, Yu Qing, how dare you try to kill a cultivator of the hidden sword sect. Mu Xingyi, Cui Ji, Mu Yinglong and the others also felt the vast destructive power of this strike. For a moment, these people shouted in shock and anger at the same time, and with the fastest speed, they attacked the Golden Crow Divine Body, trying to weaken the power of the Golden Crow Divine Body and reduce the power of this strike. However, Xing Hui was determined to borrow the power of the eruption of the Jindan to destroy the prestige of the North Moon Peak, so he turned a blind eye to the roars of these Jindan stage experts. The Golden Crow Divine Body's strike was like the fall of the sun, and in an instant, Du Longzi's figure was completely submerged. Die! No! Du Longzi, who couldn't dodge, roared, and the shadow of a green dragon appeared on his body, trying to block the destructive strike of the Golden Crow Divine Body. Unfortunately, it was useless. How terrifying was the power of the Golden Core of the Great Sun Realm. Under this strike, Du Longzi's spiritual level battle body was like a sand sculpture that was hit by a huge wave, and in an instant, it turned into ashes and disappeared on the spot. Then, the remaining power rolled down, and fiercely swept past Du Longzi's body. The blazing true fire of the Great Sun and the destructive torrent in the Golden Crow Divine Body smashed Du Longzi, a Jindan stage expert, into pieces on the spot, and in the next moment, he was burned to ashes. After killing Du Longzi, the Golden Crow Divine Body suddenly turned around, sweeping up monstrous flames and endless heat waves, and fiercely collided with the attacks of Mu Xingyi and the other Jindan stage, never-ending stage, and transformative stage experts. For a moment, an even more violent torrent of energy exploded at the center of the collision. The blazing energy compressed the surrounding air, forming a shock wave visible to the naked eye in the void. The shock wave and the air violently rubbed against each other, forming a large amount of thunder and lightning, sweeping up blazing flames and spreading in all directions. The air, clouds, and mist in the void were burned to ashes on the spot. Even those tranquil stage and transformative stage experts who wanted to attack Xing Hui's original body, and even the three Jindan stage experts, Mu Xingyi, Mu Yinglong, and Cui Ji, were blown away by the energy shock wave mixed with the blazing torrent of thunder and lightning, flying hundreds of meters, or even thousands of meters away. As for Xing Hui, who bore the brunt of the impact, the Golden Crow Divine Body trembled violently. The powerful energy obtained by relying on the divine technique was almost completely squandered at this moment, and the radiance of the Golden Crow Divine Body, which had climbed to its peak state with great difficulty, quickly dimmed again. Du Longzi. Damn it, he killed Du Longzi. How dare he attack our Hidden Sword Sect's guest elder? Isn't he afraid that he won't be able to establish himself on the Hidden Sword continent in the future? Bastard! Yu Qing, I want you dead. The few Jindan stage experts who were sent flying by the shock wave looked at Du Longzi, who had been completely burned to ashes without leaving a corpse behind, and all of them let out angry roars. However, as they roared, Mu Yinglong and Cui Ji felt a faint chill in their hearts, and their gazes towards Xing Hui carried a trace of fear. Assassin! Xing Hui, he actually dared to kill them. After all, they were guest elders of the Hidden Sword Sect, and the Hidden Sword Sect was the one and only overlord of the entire Hidden Sword continent. Killing a guest elder of the Hidden Sword Sect was equivalent to provoking the entire Hidden Sword Sect. It was precisely because of this that even if the Divine Grace Trading Company had really invited a formidable Golden Core Realm expert from the Chaotic Shrine to assist them, they still dared to swarm forward. Because once they provoked the Hidden Sword Sect, they would have to face the encirclement of a few hundred Golden Core Realm experts of the entire Hidden Sword Sect. With this kind of confidence, they were not afraid of those foreign Jindan stage experts at all. But now, Xing Hui actually dared to kill a guest elder of the Hidden Sword Sect. From today onwards, their lives would no longer be safe. Kill him, Yu Qing, you dare to kill my North Moon Peak's people. You are provoking the entire Hidden Sword sect, and no one can save you. Kill him for me. His divine body was injured by our attack just now. Kill him now, don't give him any chance to breathe. The Peak Master of the North Moon Peak, Mu Xingyi, let out an exasperated roar. Mu Yinglong, Cui Ji, and the others glanced at the Golden Crow divine body that had indeed dimmed, and secretly nodded, suppressing the fear and chill in their hearts. However, before they could make a move, the Golden Crow divine body, which had dimmed a little, let out another loud cry. At the same time, 7 rays of light shot out from the 7 blazing suns in the void and poured into the Golden Crow divine body. With the amplification of these rays of light, the Golden Crow divine body, which had dimmed a little, once again erupted with a power that was not inferior to the golden core of the great sun. Blazing flames rolled and swept over, coldly glaring at the Golden Core stage, never-ending stage, and transformative stage experts of the North Moon Peak. Immediately, those never-ending stage, transformative stage, and even Golden Core stage experts who thought they could take advantage of the situation came to an abrupt halt. Chapter 475. Kill me. With just you guys. I've only killed a bandit. If all of you are still so stubborn as to associate yourselves with this bandit, then don't blame me for cleaning up the sect on behalf of the Hidden Sword sect. I believe that even if I kill all of you in the end, and even if Hidden Sword Venerable finds out about this matter, Hidden Sword Venerable won't say anything after he understands the truth of the matter. Xing Hui, with the power of the Golden Crow divine body, was completely unafraid of the siege of the North Moon Peak. Seeing that there were 6 people from the North Moon Peak whose aura had dropped due to the time limit of the divine body, he flew up again without hesitation, like a blazing sun, and charged straight at the North Moon Peak. Before the Golden Crow divine body arrived, a giant sword condensed under the claws of the Golden Crow divine body had already condensed, and a destructive aura immediately spread out. Be careful, the power of this sword is so great that a never-ending divine body can't block it at all. Ting Lu, who had suffered a great loss from this attack, hurriedly warned when he saw this scene. In fact, there was no need for his warning. Just feeling the destructive power emitted from this giant flaming sword was enough to make everyone tremble with fear. Seeing that the Golden Crow divine body was about to kill this sword, the leading never-ending divine body expert did not even have the courage to resist. He quickly retreated and shouted at the same time, "Peak Master, save me! Stop right there!" Mu Xingyi roared, and the aura all over his body surged. The power of his Golden Crow divine body soared, and then, with a terrifying power, he fiercely grabbed at Xing Hui's Golden Crow divine body sword. Crack the Golden Core. Seeing that the never-ending divine body expert was in danger of being killed by Xing Hui, Mu Xingyi chose to crack the Golden Core. Although he had only cracked a part of the power of the Golden Core, relying on the eruption of this power, he still fiercely grabbed the Golden Crow divine body sword that Xing Hui had killed, and crushed it into pieces. Correspondingly, the power of his Golden Crow divine body that erupted from cracking the Golden Core rapidly decreased. After the decrease, not only was he unable to maintain his peak state, but his aura had also shrunk by a lot and his vitality had already been damaged. Cracking the Gold Core. I'd like to see how many times your gold cores can withstand the cracking of your gold cores. The sword of the glorious sun was blocked, but Xing Hui's expression did not change at all. The Golden Crow body let out a long cry, and the mighty power once again condensed in front of him. Accompanied by the amplification of the 10 sun burning immortal technique, a sword of the glorious sun, which was only a little smaller than the previous one, was formed again. You can still, seeing the newly formed flame sword, Mu Xingyi's eyes suddenly widened. It's the 7 blazing suns. The 7 suns reabsorbed the energy dissipated by his attacks and fed it back to him. Even if the energy dissipated but couldn't be absorbed in time, the suns transformed it into a special environment that can increase his combat strength. If we can't destroy these 7 suns, he will only become stronger. Cui Ji seemed to understand something, and suddenly made a move. His battle physique manifested, and with a roar, he suddenly spat out a sword light as fast as lightning, which shot toward the blazing sun in the void. However, although the blazing suns formed by the 10 sun burning immortal technique were mighty and needed the assistance of the scarlet sun disk, in fact, once these blazing suns were formed, they would turn into a special existence between energy and nothingness, which had a significant effect in resisting attacks. Cui Ji's thunderous attack, which even spat out his life divine weapon, only whistled through the blazing sun, pierced through it and blew it up. According to the damage caused to the blazing sun by this attack, the time it took to destroy the blazing sun was calculated. He would have to launch similar attacks 20 or 30 times. And Xing Hui, obviously, it was impossible to give them the time to attack freely 20 or 30 times. Peak Master LV Xiangyang, this Yuqing is obviously from another continent. Our North Moon Peak and your Aurora Peak are both members of the Hidden Sword sect. Are you going to stand aside and watch this fierce person from another continent slaughter our North Moon Peak? Seeing that they couldn't block Xing Hui's attack at all, and that they, who had reached the second level of the divine art, wouldn't be able to hold on for long, Cui Ji immediately turned his gaze to the Aurora Peak that had 3 Golden Elixir Realm experts and 6 Eternal Realm experts. Cui Ji's words made LV Xiangyang slightly tempted, however, before he could make a decision to deal with Xing Hui had already laughed loudly. Huh, it's fine that your North Moon Peak colluded with bandits to kill the elders of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, but now you want to drag in the Aurora Peak as well? My master more or less has some friendship with the Hidden Sword Venerable. Back then, they had discussed Tao together. I didn't expect the Hidden Sword Venerable to have been in seclusion for so many years, and so many disciples of the sect he established have actually fallen to such a state. It seems that I have to contact my master immediately after I go back and ask him to have a good talk with the Hidden Sword Venerable about rectifying the sect's discipline. What? Your master actually knows the Hidden Sword Venerable? LV Xiangyang, who originally wanted to make a move, suddenly changed his expression. The main reason why the Hidden Sword sect was so rampant now was that the Hidden Sword Venerable had been in seclusion for hundreds of years and had not made any moves. In the past, although the Hidden Sword Venerable would often be in seclusion, he would still show his face from time to time. However, this time, he had been in seclusion for 100 years without any news. Considering the Hidden Sword Venerable's age, everyone was guessing whether the Hidden Sword Venerable had reached the end of his lifespan and had died in seclusion. This was also the reason why the North Moon Peak supported by the Heavenly Tao and the Aurora Peak supported by the Grand Supreme had started to continuously take over the businesses that originally belonged to the Hidden Sword sect. However, once the Hidden Sword Venerable was confirmed to be alive and had been awakened from seclusion, once the Hidden Sword Venerable knew what the Aurora Peak and the North Moon Peak had done in the past 100 years, the 2 peaks would definitely not be able to escape the fate of being severely punished. Especially him, who was the head of the peaks, would definitely be severely punished. The main purpose of my coming here is to follow my master's orders to come to the Hidden Sword sect to explore the Myriad Sword Peak and see if I can obtain the Sword Spirit's recognition. Otherwise, why do you think I would appear in the Hidden Sword mainland? As for the matter of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, it was just a matter of convenience. Upon hearing Xing Hui's words, the expressions of LV Xiangyang, Fu Yu, Zhuang Qianxing, and the others all changed. Xing Hui claimed that he had a master. This was most likely true. A person who could awaken the bloodlines of 2 mythical beasts and cultivate both bloodlines to the level of a divine-grade combat body would definitely not believe that he did not have a powerful master to guide him behind the scenes. As for his claim that he was only following his master's orders to explore the Myriad Sword Peak in the Hidden Sword mainland and obtain the Sword Spirit's recognition, this matter was also very likely to be true. After all, judging from the series of reactions of Su Xiao and the others, the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce did not know Xing Hui's strength at all. Otherwise, if he wanted to save Jin Yin, why would he need to mobilize so many people and even surrender to them and almost put himself in danger? At the thought of this, Lv Xiangyang, Fu Yu, Zhuang Qiansheng, and the others already believed most of what he said. Let's go. On the side, when Mu Xing heard that Xing Hui actually had such a background and that it might directly alarm the hidden sword venerable, he did not dare to continue fighting to the death. Of course, the main problem was that if they continued to fight, they would not have any chance of winning. In a situation where they still had enough battle power, the best choice was to retreat in time. After receiving Mu Xing's order, Cui Ji and Mu Yinglong, who were originally a little afraid of killing without hesitation, let out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They leapt up and were about to lead the others away. But at this moment, Xing Hui's voice came from behind, "Go. Did I say you could go? Yuqing, what do you want to do? You should know that this place is not far from the headquarters of the Hidden Sword sect. If you really don't want to let us go, we only need to hold on and ask for help from the experts in the headquarters of the North Moon Peak. When the Grand Elder of the North Moon Peak and the young Peak Master of the North Moon Peak arrive, you will definitely not be able to escape death." Mu Xingyi said fiercely. "Is that so? Putting aside whether I can defeat the others of the North Moon Peak or not, if I want to kill a few of you here, it won't be a problem. Then I'll kill a few of you at once. I'll kill a few of you at once. I'd like to see just how many people of the North Moon Peak can withstand my killing spree." Xing Hui leapt up and directly intercepted everyone in the air. Mu Xingyi's heart trembled. When he thought of the great strength Xing Hui had displayed, if he really targeted one or two of them, it really would be difficult for them to escape. For a moment, he could only shout sullenly, "Yuqing, just what do you want?" "It's very simple." Xing Hui looked at Mu Xingyi and said coldly, "Didn't you ask the people of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce to come and ransom them with 100 Tao rhymes? Now, your people have fallen into my hands indirectly. It would be impolite not to reciprocate. My request is not high. If your North Moon Peak leaves behind an item containing 100 Tao rhymes, I can let bygones be bygones." 100 Tao rhymes. When he heard Xing Hui's price, Mu Xingyi could not help but scream crazily, "Yuqing, are you crazy? You actually want our North Moon Peak to give you 100 Tao rhymes? Dream on. Then I have no choice but to take it myself. I remember that a Son of Chaos at rank 10 or above can be sold for 50 Daoist rhymes. Since 10 of you have utilized divine arts, it can be seen that there are 10 Sons of Chaos at rank 10 or above. I only need to capture 2 of you alive, and I'll naturally be able to force their chaos techniques out of them and exchange them for 100 Daoist rhymes." Xing Hui's gaze swept across and landed on the weakest and most powerful of the 10th level Sons of Chaos. "I'll start with you." After saying that, the golden crow phantom above his head let out a loud and clear cry. It swept up monstrous flames and charged toward that Eternal Realm expert. That Eternal Realm expert felt the mighty destructive power of Xing Hui's attack and was instantly scared out of his wits. He hurriedly shouted and retreated, "Peak Master, save me! Yuqing!" Mu Xingyi let out a furious roar and was about to join forces with Cui Ji, Mu Yinglong, and the others to intercept Xing Hui. However, before they could stop Xing Hui, the golden crow above Xing Hui's head had already grabbed at the air. A round of resplendent eternity exploded. Under the amplification of the domain of the 10 burning heavens immortal technique, it formed a dazzling radiance that covered the sun, so bright that everyone could barely open their eyes. And in the instant that Mu Xingyi, Cui Ji, and the others were slightly delayed, a shrill scream rang out from the endless radiance. It was that Eternal Realm expert. When the resplendent eternity radiance dissipated, the Eternal Realm expert targeted by Xing Hui's entire body had been destroyed by Xing Hui. Moreover, Xing Hui had directly controlled the power of the Golden Crow and captured him alive. Chapter 476. First 1. Tsing Hui grabbed the never-ending stage expert and poured the powerful Great Sun True Fire into the never-ending stage expert's body, causing him to scream in pain. As he screamed, flames spewed out from his ears, nose, eyes, and mouth. The true qi in his body had been completely destroyed. Then, he struck the never-ending stage expert hard, knocking him unconscious, and threw him toward Su Tong and the others. Watch him. This is 50 Daoist rhymes. After saying that, he pounced again. This time, his target was another never-ending stage expert who had a divine art. Stop! 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 Seeing one of their never-ending stage experts captured by Tsing Hui in an instant and unable to do anything to Tsing Hui, Mu Xingyi, the peak master of the North Moon Peak, finally couldn't hold it in any longer. I'll give you 100 Daoist rhymes. Release him immediately. He knew that he had to do so. Otherwise, the elders of the North Moon Peak, who were originally dissatisfied with the North Moon Peak's allegiance to the heavenly Tao, would definitely be dissatisfied. At that time, the North Moon Peak would be unable to rise again and would no longer be able to compete with the Aurora Peak and the Hidden Sword Peak. I'll give you the Daoist rhymes you want. Oh. Tsing Hui's hand movements paused slightly as his gaze fell on Mu Xingyi. Where's the Daoist rhymes item? You have to release him first before I give you the Daoist rhymes item. Heh, you want me to release him without seeing the Daoist rhymes item? Mu Xingyi saw Tsing Hui's sneer and immediately said angrily, don't forget that Jin Yin of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce is still in my hands. Hearing Mu Xingyi's words, Su Xiao suddenly stepped forward and said sternly, Mu Xingyi, you finally admitted that you're the one who ordered Du Longzi to capture Elder Jin Yin of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. Release Senior Elder Jin Yin immediately. Otherwise, I will definitely use the channels of my Divine Grace Merchant Guild to spread the news to everyone. I will let the entire Hidden Sword sect, and even the entire Hidden Sword continent, know that your North Moon Peak killed their own sect's senior elder. Oh. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. You even captured Elder Jin Yin from the Divine Grace Merchant Guild. Where is she? Let him go. Tsing Hui chimed in. You, Mu Xingyi said in a deep voice, will hand Doyan Jin Yin over to you, but you'll have to reduce the Tao rhythm you requested by half. Do you think this is a negotiation? Cut it in half. I can't be bothered with Senior Elder Jin Yin's life or death. If you really have the ability, you can just kill her directly. At most, I'll get the people of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce to prepare a shadow stone and spread the scene of you killing Senior Elder Jin Yin throughout the entire Hidden Sword sect. I'll let the people of the Hidden Sword sect understand the methods of your North Moon Peak to kill your fellow sect members. As for the 100 Daoist rhymes that you should hand over, it can't be less. Yuqing, don't go too far. Mu Xingyi furiously shouted. So what if I bully you? Could it be that your North Moon Peak's various methods against the Divine Grace Merchant Guild can be considered as frequent courtesy? Tsing Hui coldly replied. Seeing that Tsing Hui had angered the people of the North Moon Peak endlessly, the Divine Grace Merchant Guild was somewhat dissatisfied with him for not caring about Senior Elder Jin Yin's life, but they still felt a sense of relief in their hearts. For so many years, the Divine Grace Merchant Guild had been suppressed by the North Moon Peak, and it was almost impossible for them to breathe. On average, the North Moon Peak would pressure the Divine Grace Merchant Guild more every month, causing the people of the Divine Grace Merchant Guild to be filled with grievances. However, today, it was finally their turn to force the North Moon Peak's peak master, Tsing Hui, into silence. Even if this kind of coercion was brought on by Tsing Hui, who was not a member of the Divine Grace Merchant Guild, it still made them feel a sense of pride. I don't want to talk too much nonsense with you. Either hand over the Daoist item, or I'll do it myself. In any case, as long as I capture one of you and force him to hand over the Primal Chaos incantation, the 100 Daoist rhymes will be in my hands. Why wouldn't I do it? Tsing Hui coldly snorted. This guy's way of doing things will bring about a disaster sooner or later. Seeing Xing Hui's aggressive attitude towards the North Moon Peak, Lu Xiangyang, the peak master of the Aurora Peak, felt an inexplicable sense of displeasure. Oh, so what if he can take back the 100 Taoist rhymes treasure? Don't forget, the strongest person of the North Moon Peak is not Mu Xingyi and the others, but the Great Elder who has joined the Way of Heaven and has received strong support from the Way of Heaven. It is said that the Great Elder has cultivated a superior grade gold core, and he has many magic weapons. Coupled with the enhancement of his chaotic level, his strength is not much inferior to Yu Qing's. As long as there are one or two experts of the gold core realm, it will be easy to defeat him. At that time, wouldn't the North Moon Peak have to obediently hand over all the Taoist rhymes treasures? Not only would they have to hand over all the treasures, but they might also lose many of their treasures. After all, he is not a member of the Hidden Sword sect, so the people of the North Moon Peak don't have to worry as much about him as they do about the Divine Grace Merchant Guild. Mou sneered. That's not necessarily true. This guy's background is also very shocking. What if he brings out his master? Zhuang Qianxing interrupted. Master? He has a backer, but doesn't the North Moon Peak have one as well? In addition to the Great Elder, the North Moon Peak also has a young peak master, Bei Yu Xian. Bei Yu Xian is the disciple of Sect Master Qi Xian, one of the 36 Taoists of the Way of Heaven. Although Sect Master Qi Xian took him in partly because he liked Bei Yu Xian's cultivation talent, the main reason was to rope in the North Moon Peak so that he could intervene in the affairs of the Hidden Sword sect. Once a powerful outsider dares to stir up trouble and ruin Sect Master Qi Xian's plan, do you think Sect Master Qi Xian will be willing to let it go? No matter how powerful Yu Qing's background is, it can't be more powerful than the Sect Master of the Way of Heaven. Mou's words made Zhuang Qianxing open his mouth, but he didn't know how to refute. After a long while, he said nothing, which was a tacit agreement. I'll give you the 100 Taoist rhymes treasures. I only hope that you can hold on to these 100 Taoist rhymes treasures. Just as Mou had guessed, Mu Xingyi forcibly swallowed his anger. With a flip of his hand, he had already taken out dozens of Taoist rhymes treasures from his personal space. Seeing those Taoist rhymes treasures, Xing Lian of the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce couldn't help but curse, damn it. More than half of these Taoist rhymes treasures belong to our Hidden Sword sect's resource points. We need to turn them over to the main sect. The main sect will keep 10%, and give Hidden Sword Venerable 50%. The remaining 40% will be evenly distributed to the other 36 peaks. But in fact, the distribution of Taoist rhymes treasures to the other peaks has decreased by more than 10 times compared to 100 years ago. Some of the smaller peaks haven't received any Taoist rhymes treasures for decades. Obviously, they've all fallen into the North Moon Peak's pockets. They're so blatantly pocketing the Taoist rhymes treasures. The North Moon Peak and the Aurora Peak should provide the Hidden Sword Peak with the same amount of Tao-carrying items every year. In fact, it has even increased compared to before. In addition, the North Moon Peak, the Aurora Peak, and the other peaks have settled down a few other large peaks that have Golden Elixir Realm experts guarding them. Who would care about the survival of the remaining small peaks? Su Xiao said coldly, I'd like to see how Hidden Sword Venerable will deal with Hidden Sword Venerable when he comes out of seclusion and sees that the entire Hidden Sword Peak is in such a mess because of them. Su Tong glanced at Su Xiao. In fact, she more or less knew why the North Moon Peak and Aurora Peak were so fearless. Firstly, it was rumored that Hidden Sword Venerable had already died of old age in seclusion. Secondly, even if Hidden Sword Venerable really wanted to get rid of them, the two peaks were backed by the Peak Chaos Organization's Heavenly Tao and Grand Supreme. Hidden Sword Venerable might not dare to fall out with them and kill the top executives of the two sections. This was the difference between having a background and not having one. Very good, at least you know what's good for you. As for whether I can keep these Taoist rhymes treasures for 100 years, that's not something you need to consider. Xing Hui directly put the Taoist rhymes treasures into his personal space and then made a gesture to Su Xiao. Su Xiao naturally released her control over the eternal expert. Immediately, a never-ending realm expert rushed over and quickly brought him back to the North Moon Peaks team. Jin Yin is in that courtyard. You'll know if you go and check it out yourselves. Let's go. Mu Xingyi said with a black face. Then, he waved his hand and quickly left with the North Moon Peak team. He didn't want to stay on this peak for a second longer. This time, not only did he lose Du Longzi, the golden core expert he had roped in, but he also lost 100 Taoist rhymes. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he had suffered a double loss. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't let this matter go easily. Xing Hui naturally understood this point. However, he wasn't afraid. If not for the fact that he wasn't from the Hidden Sword sect and might cause Hidden Sword Venerable to be displeased by killing the Hidden Sword Venerable, he didn't intend to let any of the people from the North Moon Peak off. 10 rank 10 Sons of Chaos. That was an income of 500 Taoist rhymes. Although it was impossible for him to capture all of these Sons of Chaos alive during the battle, and sometimes he couldn't control his strength and accidentally killed them, even half of them were equivalent to 250 Taoist rhymes. Where else could he find such a bountiful harvest? It was no wonder that even in the Infinite Region, there were many organizations that specialized in hunting Sons of Chaos. Although this trip was extremely dangerous, the benefits were far beyond that of an ordinary sea-crossing merchant association. Let's go. Seeing that the people from the North Moon Peak had left, the people from the Aurora Peak didn't dare to stay any longer. They were afraid that Xing Hui would turn around and extort them again. At this moment, Xing Lian also rushed into Du Longzi's courtyard and rescued Elder Jin Yin, who was unconscious. Phew! Seeing that Elder Jin Yin was safe and sound, the people from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce heaved a sigh of relief. On the other hand, Su Xiao stepped forward and bowed deeply to Xing Hui. Lord Yuqing, the entire Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce thanks Lord Yuqing for your help. It's all right, I saved all of you entirely for the sake of my disciple, Su Yuan. However, this is the only time. Hearing that, Su Xiao thought of the request that Xing Hui had made previously. She immediately gritted her teeth and said, Lord Yuqing, if you can really help the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce solve the current problem and get through the crisis, we are willing to offer you all the Taoist items that contain more than 200 Taoist rhymes that we have accumulated over the years. Chapter 477. Oh. Xing Hui's gaze fell on Su Xiao. It seemed that the president of the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce had finally understood. Very good, I will take this matter to heart. Currently, with me overseeing your Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, before they truly understand my background, even if the people of the North Moon Peak want to take revenge for Du Longzi, they won't dare to act rashly. And during this period of time, our opportunity lies. Yes. Su Xiao responded, and then asked with a hint of probing, Lord Yuqing, I wonder if you can ask the senior master behind you to help. If that senior helps, the threat of the North Moon Peak is certainly not worth mentioning. Xing Hui glanced at Su Xiao, is there a need to ask such a question? If those powerful beings were really willing to help the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce, they would have already done so. Although the Hidden Sword Continent is not far from the Heaven Wasteland domain, the forces of the Hidden Sword Continent are not comparable to that of other continents. There are dozens of experts of the Golden Core realm, and even if the North Moon Peak and Aurora Peak are added together, there are more than 10 experts of the Golden Core realm. With such a lineup, unless the powerful beings who want to send down their incarnations have a remarkable ability seed, there is no possibility of a comeback. And if they carry a remarkable ability seed, once they are targeted, they will pay the price of death. Do you think that 200 Tao rhythms is enough for a powerful being to risk his life to help the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce solve the problem? This. Su Xiao was momentarily unable to answer. 200 Tao rhythms was indeed enough for a powerful being to take a risk, but this so-called risk also depended on the degree of danger. If there was only a certain level of danger, then the powerful being might not necessarily not take the risk, but if the level of danger was so high that there was a 90% chance of survival. Other than a fool, no one would gamble their life for 200 Tao rhythms. In addition to the danger, after obtaining your 200 Tao rhythms, the revenge from the heavenly Tao is also a problem. After all, behind the Aurora Peak and North Moon Peak are the heavenly Tao and supreme of the 10 great organizations of chaos. Under various factors, the benefits of 200 Tao rhythms is simply not enough for any powerful being to take such a risk. I understand. Su Zhao's face revealed a hint of bitterness. Then what method does Mr. Yuqing plan to use to help the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce get through the current crisis? Seeing that Su Zhao was depressed, Su Tong hurriedly asked. As for the method, I have already thought of one. In fact, the main reason why the Hidden Sword sect is in such a situation is because of the inaction of the Hidden Sword Peak and the rumor of the death of the Hidden Sword Venerable. If the Hidden Sword Peak is willing to stand out and maintain order, even if the North Moon Peak and the Aurora Peak have the support of the Grand Supreme and the Way of Heaven, they would not be so arrogant. However, if the Hidden Sword Venerable is not dead and can appear once, the arrogance of the Aurora Peak and the North Moon Peak will definitely be completely suppressed in the face of a continent with a powerful person. If the Hidden Sword Venerable is determined enough, he can completely disregard the secret influence of the Grand Supreme and the Way of Heaven and completely disintegrate the Aurora Peak and the North Moon Peak. Venerable Hidden Sword, Su Tong's eyes immediately lit up when she heard Qing Su mention the Hidden Sword Venerable. It's impossible for the Hidden Sword Venerable to die so easily. According to what I know, 1,000 years ago, when the Hidden Sword Venerable showed signs of age, he paid a great price to purchase a few heavenly resources that could extend his lifespan, including the extremely valuable unfalling flower and the fruit of eternal life, which is even more valuable. Even if Golden Core experts only have a lifespan of 2,000 years, the effects of the unfalling flower and the fruit of eternal life would still be sufficient for the Hidden Sword Venerable to live to 3,000 or 4,000 years old. Moreover, according to our observations, the Hidden Sword Venerable has fought against others in the past 1,000 years or so, but he hasn't suffered any heavy injuries to his foundation. His lifespan shouldn't be affected by that much either. Oh. Tsing Hui nodded slightly. This was probably the reason why the North Moon Peak and the Aurora Peak were able to restrain each other. Otherwise, the two major forces would have lost their patience long ago if there had been no movement for 100 years. Mr. Yuqing, doesn't your master have a good relationship with the Hidden Sword Venerable? If your master is able to invite the Hidden Sword Honorable out, all of the problems that our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce is currently facing will be easily solved. Once the problems of our Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce are solved, I believe that Miss will definitely not be stingy with the 200 Taoist rhymes that she should pay you. Su Tong was full of anticipation. Su Xiao, Si Tongzhen and the rest looked at Tsing Hui, waiting for his response. Tsing Hui shook his head. If I could use this method, I would have used it long ago. 200 Taoist rhymes is definitely a huge benefit for me. It's a pity. My master has contacted the Hidden Sword Venerable, but he did not reply. I came to the Hidden Sword mainland under the orders of my master. On one hand, I want to explore the Hidden Sword Venerable in the Hidden Sword mainland. On the other hand, I want to visit the Hidden Sword Venerable on behalf of my master to see if he is all right. He has already used it. Su Zhao's eyes flashed with deep disappointment. Currently, the best method that I can think of is to explore the Myriad Sword Peak. If I can attract the Myriad Sword Chime on the Myriad Sword Peak, I will be able to get the attention of the Hidden Sword Venerable. If the Hidden Sword Venerable is still fine, I will be able to get the attention of the Hidden Sword Venerable. Explore the Myriad Sword Peak. Su Xiao bitterly smiled. It's no use. We've already thought of this method. Over the past 2 years, we've secretly recruited some of the most famous sword geniuses in the continent and invited them to the Myriad Sword Peak. We've tried to use the Myriad Sword Chime to attract the attention of the hidden sword venerable. Unfortunately, the Myriad Sword Peak seems to have been neglected for a long time. It's almost useless. Not to mention defeating the sword spirits and gaining their recognition, there aren't many people who can even attract the sword spirits to show themselves. In fact, in the past 100 years, the most talented person has only gained the recognition of 12 sword spirits. It's not even close to the Myriad Sword Chime. The recognition of 12 sword spirits, Xing Hui frowned. He did not expect that the difficulty of exploring the Myriad Sword Peak would be so high. Even though the Myriad Sword Chime was only an imaginary number now, and it was hard to say if there were even 100 divine weapons with sword spirits in the entire Myriad Sword Peak, even if there were only half of 100 divine weapons, there would still be 50 of them. The difference between 50 and 12 was more than 4 times. Although the hope is slim, we still have to try. Xing Hui said. Su Tong, Su Xiao, and the others saw that there was no other way and could only nod. At least now, they had Xing Hui in the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce, whose battle strength was not inferior to that of an upper-grade golden core cultivator. Compared to the previous situation where they could not even guarantee their safety, it was much better. In a month, I will explore the Myriad Sword Peak. During this month, you will try to find a way to collect the top sword manuals of the hidden sword sect for me to learn and strengthen my own swordsmanship foundation. A month, isn't it a bit too rushed? Su Tong said hesitantly. It can only be a month. If it is too long, there will be changes. Xing Hui said. In fact, the changes he mentioned did not only include the North Moon Peak but also the Way of Heaven. One had to know that Broken Sword already knew about his chaos level. The reason why Broken Sword did not leak it out was because it wanted to monopolize his chaos incantation. As an almighty who had a level 11 flying sword, if Broken Sword did not care about the exhaustion and flew at full speed day and night, it would not be an extravagant hope to fly 200,000 kilometers in a day. Based on this calculation, Broken Sword Continent, which was less than 20 million kilometers away from the eastern wilderness, would only need 100 days to cross. What if Savage Sword found out about his whereabouts, and he secretly rushed over? Once they met, it would definitely be a huge problem. He could not guarantee that he could always use the backtrack skill. Alright then, we will use the power of the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce and collect all the sword manuals we can for Mr. Yuqing in this month. Okay. Xing Hui agreed. Soon, the group set off again and returned to the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce. When they arrived at the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce, Su Xiao did not waste any time and used all the power of the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce to collect sword manuals. The sword manuals that could catch the eye of the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce were all extraordinary. The worst of them contained sword moves that could be used by true energy realm experts. In just 3 days, the number of sword manuals in Xing Hui's cultivation room had reached 100. This was after Su Xiao, Su Tong, and the others considered that Xing Hui's time was limited and removed the ordinary sword manuals that were not famous. Otherwise, the number of true energy realm sword manuals in front of Xing Hui would be more than 3 times. These sword manuals, Xing Hui spent 10 days and read through all the sword manuals. In the end, he frowned. Among the sword manuals, the sword moves in the true energy realm, spirit refining realm, spirit uniting realm, and green hell realm were better. However, at the prominent divine realm, the sword moves were obviously less effective. It was as if they existed solely to rely on the battle physique. At the true energy realm, transformative realm, and even never-ending realm, this feature was even more obvious. As for the Golden Core realm, among the 6 Golden Core realm sword manuals that he read, the strongest killing move of any sword manual was not as powerful as an attack that relied on the battle physique of the Golden Core realm. At best, it was comparable to the battle physique's talent. These sword manuals were of little value. They were tasteless but a pity to throw away. Many of the sword manuals are inferior to the Wuji sword sex killing sword manual in terms of concept and profoundness. The only advantage they have is that the inheritance of the lifeless sword manual isn't complete, and these sword manuals can be used by Golden Core Realm experts. Xing Hui put down another Golden Core Realm sword manual and sighed in his heart. All the sword moves and killing moves were accessories to the battle physique. They were created to better unleash the power of the battle physique. Rather than calling them sword manuals, they were more like supplements to the battle physique's talent techniques. After all, using innate skills consumed too much energy. It was impossible for cultivators to use their strongest innate skills to attack all the time. At this time, the sword moves derived from the sword manual could come in handy. Not only could it reduce the energy consumption, but it could also create an attack effect that was only inferior to innate skills. However, the sword manuals, they were far from the sword manuals that Xing Hui had in mind. This is indeed a world where the battle physique is paramount. The battle physique first, then the divine abilities, and finally, the law phenomenon. Then, the domain, shattering the vacuum, and turning into a real divine beast or sacred beast. That's the most powerful path. The other cultivation methods, such as alchemy, arrays, sword arts, spirit refinement, beast taming, and so on, are just supplements to the battle physique and divine abilities. Xing Hui heaved a sigh. On earth, he loved the sword, practiced it, learned it, and understood it. However, this was not a world for swordsmen after all. Chapter 478. Good swordsmanship, practice swordsmanship, seek swordsmanship, practice swordsmanship, comprehend swordsmanship. But in the end, this can't be the reason or excuse for me to switch to swordsmanship. A person can't give up his life for his hobbies. Just like a painter, if he can't even afford his basic living expenses, how can he devote his energy and effort to painting? No matter how fanatical his hobby is, he can only choose to face reality and solve his basic living problems first. This world is the same. The strong are respected, and danger lurks everywhere. Practicing swordsmanship can't give me powerful combat strength. It's the foundation of survival in this world, and it can't allow me to return to Earth as soon as possible to reunite with my family and friends. The only choice I have, is to give up swordsmanship. Xing Hui slowly put down the sword manual in his hand, an indescribable sense of loneliness and emptiness in his eyes. Sword Saint Xing Hui. Perhaps I can't be called a true swordsman at all. The moment he put down the sword manual, a large chunk of his essence, energy, and spirit seemed to be stripped away from him, and the light in his eyes dimmed. He felt a sense of loss. It was as if something important had been dug out of his heart. It was completely empty, making that place feel incomparably cold and empty. But, so what if his willpower was low? He still had to continue walking down the path. Low willpower couldn't be the reason or excuse for him to exile himself and abandon himself to depravity. Humans had to face reality in the end. Enduring the emptiness and loneliness, Xing Hui focused his attention on the Son of Chaos interface in the Chaos Temple. Battle physique, divine abilities, domains, divinity, and even a world with a thought were the strongest cultivation paths in this world. Naturally, he needed to devote more energy to this cultivation system. But before that, preserving his life was the most important thing. Xing Hui glanced at the newly acquired 100-year-old Dao item, then at the accumulated Dao aura in the Fortune Jade. It was time to cultivate the supreme immortal technique, Yin-Yang reversal, to great success and completely resolve the crisis brought about by the sword wielder. A month passed quickly. When the appointed time arrived, Su Tong, Su Xiao, and the others waited outside Xing Hui's courtyard early in the morning. Whether or not the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce could be resolved once and for all depended on this moment. Although Su Tong, Su Xiao, Xing Lian, Si Tongzhen, and the healed elder Jin Yin didn't have high hopes for Tsing Hui's trip to the Myriad Sword Peak this time, to the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce in crisis. Any hope, no matter how small it was, had to be firmly grasped with all their might. Strength. The Myriad Swords Peak was located in the southeast corner of the Hidden Sword Sect. It was about 300 kilometers away from the Hidden Sword Peak, which was the core area of the Hidden Sword Sect. It was neither the core area of the Hidden Sword Sect nor the border area of the Hidden Sword Sect. The sect had always had a rule that any cultivator could become a disciple of the sect as long as they could enter the Myriad Sword Peak and obtain the recognition of one sword spirit. If they could obtain the recognition of more than 10 sword spirits, they could directly become a true disciple of the sect. If they could obtain the recognition of 100 sword spirits, they could become the sect leader's personal disciple. If they could cause the 10,000 sword chime, the sword Venerable Hidden Sword would personally take them in and make them the next sect leader. As the number of sword spirits in the Myriad Sword Peak dwindled, the sword spirits that could not lose their spirituality after such a long time were all outstanding sword spirits. Although they did not have the supreme divine power they had in their heyday, it was getting more and more difficult to obtain the recognition of these arrogant sword spirits. The 10,000 sword chime had also become a saying. Currently, the so-called 10,000 sword chime had been compressed time and time again. It was now to the point where the sword Venerable Hidden Sword would personally take them in as a disciple and make them the next sect leader of the Hidden Sword Sect. Even so, in recent years, the person with the best results had only obtained the recognition of 12 sword spirits at the same time. It was almost 10 times worse than 100 sword chime. They're here, they're here. The people from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce are here. As soon as the group of people from Qing Su set foot in the vicinity of the Myriad Swords Peak, countless figures immediately appeared around the peak. They pointed at Qing Su and the group of people from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce. That's the expert who killed Du Longzi of the North Moon Peak. His bearing is indeed extraordinary. I heard that the great elder of the North Moon Peak wanted to kill him personally. However, considering that he was about to break into the Myriad Sword Peak, he wanted to see if he was a real talent before making a decision. If he was a top talent, for the future development of the Hidden Sword Sect, the great elder of the North Moon Peak could choose to turn hostility into friendship. However, if he was just a facade, what awaited him would be a thunderous strike. The sword spirits in the Myriad Sword Peak don't have much ability, but they all talk big. It's difficult to obtain the recognition of these sword spirits. It's even harder to obtain the recognition of all the sword spirits at the same time. It seems that even the ancestor of our Hidden Sword Sect, the Hidden Sword Venerable, could only cause the 36 spiritual swords to vibrate at the same time. All kinds of discussions could be heard from the crowd. As Tsing Hui and the others stepped onto the Myriad Sword Peak, more and more cultivators from the Hidden Sword Sect heard the commotion and rushed over, looking like they wanted to join in the fun. Mr. Yuqing, the Myriad Sword Peak is right in front of us. Su Xiao led the way in front and at the same time, looked at a mountain peak that was not very tall. Although this mountain peak did not look very tall, the entire mountain peak was mainly brown, like a piece of black iron ore. On top of it, there were many divine swords of different shapes and sizes. The number of swords was densely packed, and at a glance, there were no less than a few million swords. In the ancient books of the Hidden Sword Sect, there seems to be a record that the cornerstone of the Myriad Sword Peak has a mysterious power. If a divine sword is inserted into the peak, over time, the divine sword will breed a sword spirit. Therefore, all the swords that were no longer used or were unnecessary in the Hidden Sword Sect were all moved to the Myriad Sword Peak and inserted into it. Over time, over 1,000 years, the Myriad Sword Peak has accumulated more than 300 swords. Su Xiao noticed that Tsing Hui was sizing up the many swords on the Myriad Sword Peak and hurriedly explained. At the end, he added, but it turns out that this is obviously just a rumor. If the myriad sword peak really has the characteristic of breeding divine swords and giving birth to a sword spirit, the spiritual swords on the myriad sword peak would not have become ordinary swords with the passage of time. Xinghui looked at the myriad sword peak in front of him and could not help but think of the myriad sword peak in the Lorraine kingdom of the eastern wilderness. There was also a peerless divine sword in the myriad sword peak, and that divine sword was heavily sealed and trapped in a rock. No one knew how many years had passed and no one had discovered it. The myriad sword peak in front of him was many times larger than the stone pillar that the broken sword in the ancestral land of the myriad sword peak had originally been. In addition, there was a rumor that it seemed to breed a sword spirit. Inside, could it be a peerless divine sword? Could it be the legendary imperial demon refining sword? Just as Xinghui was pondering, a sharp gaze swept towards Xinghui. Just by looking at it, Xinghui could faintly feel an oppressive aura. As Qin Su followed the light, his gaze landed on an old man very soon. Hidden Swordmaster only accepted him as a disciple after he became a powerful figure. Due to his overflowing talent, Hidden Swordmaster named him North Divine Powers, which means that he has the potential to reach the Divine Powers realm. In fact, the talent that he has shown is worthy of the title of Divine Powers. He is not even 1,000 years old, but he has already condensed a superior grade gold core. It is said that after receiving many benefits from the way of heaven, his superior grade gold core has been perfected. Next, he can choose to continue cultivating and condense a peerless gold core, or give it a shot and try to breed a Divine Powers. Su Shaoan noticed Xinghui's gaze and immediately introduced him in a low voice with a hint of reverence in his tone. At present, he is the most powerful figure in Hidden Sword Sect. Even the Grand Elder of Hidden Sword Peak, who has the 12th level divine weapon, 8 Desolation Demon Vanquishing Sword, may not be able to beat him. More than half of the reason why North Moon Peak can develop to such a scale is because of Grand Elder North Divine Powers. Perfected superior grade gold core, Xinghui looked at North Divine Powers. No wonder he could give him such a strong sense of oppression. If Xinghui did not use the 10 Burning Heavens immortal technique, he may not be able to fight against such a powerful figure. If the other party's chaotic level was high enough and had recovery characteristics above the 10th level, Xinghui might even be at a disadvantage. The people from Aurora Peak and Hidden Sword Peak are also here. When Su Shao introduced North Divine Powers to Xinghui, Su Tong reminded him in a low voice. Xinghui glanced around and saw that there were more than 10 gold core realm experts at the foot of Myriad Swords Peak. Although they represented different forces, it also proved the strength of the Hidden Sword Sect, the supreme ruler of the Hidden Sword Continent. Anyone can enter Myriad Swords Peak as long as they abide by the rules. Even the sect leader is not qualified to stop them. However, before entering Myriad Swords Peak, you have to register with the 2 peak guarding elders. Su Shao said with a smile. Okay. Xinghui said and came to the foot of Myriad Swords Peak. The 10,000 Swords Peak was no more than 1,000 meters tall. It was mainly brown and black, like a giant meteorite that fell from the sky. There was not a single blade of grass growing on the peak, and there was no living creature. It was full of loneliness and desolation. Apart from the countless sharp swords, there was nothing else. Fortunately, because the Hidden Swords sect had people who entered Myriad Swords Peak all year round, there was still a path on the peak. One of the 2 peak guarding elders lived in a thatched cottage in front of the path. At this moment, the peak guarding elder obviously knew that Xinghui was going to enter the mountain. He walked out of the thatched cottage and saw Xinghui. He said in a deep voice, "When you enter the mountain, you must remember that your cultivation cannot exceed the true Qi realm. Once you exceed the true Qi realm, although you can defeat the sword spirit, you will not be able to gain the sword spirit's recognition. Even if you reach the peak, it will be meaningless. Furthermore, when we find that you have used your true Qi realm cultivation, we will invite you down the mountain." "I can't use my true Qi realm cultivation." Xinghui listened and nodded. "There are many treasured swords on the mountain, but you still have to sense which one is a spiritual sword and which one is an ordinary sword. If you can't even find a spiritual sword, you are not qualified to enter the mountain. Furthermore, after you find a spiritual sword and awaken the sword spirit in it, it is best to maintain your awakening realm cultivation and fight with the sword spirit. Otherwise, even if you defeat the sword spirits with your true chi, the chances of gaining their recognition will not be more than 30%. However, the specifics will still depend on your own swordsmanship. I understand. Please. The peak guarding elder gestured to Tsing Hui with his hand. Immediately, Tsing Hui stepped forward and directly stepped onto Myriad Sword's peak. Chapter 479. Aunt Tong, Mr. Yuqing. Can he do it? At the foot of the mountain, Su Xiao looked at Qing Su who had set foot on the mountain with a sliver of worry. This, Su Tong hesitated for a moment and said, Mr. Yuqing's teacher is acquainted with the hidden sword venerable. He even went to the Wanjian Peak in the past. Since he sent his disciple here, he must have some confidence. Otherwise, why would he send Mr. Yuqing across the sea to come here? Let's have some confidence in Mr. Yuqing. Is that so? That's great. If Mr. Yuqing can really trigger the resonance of 10,000 swords. No, he doesn't need to trigger the resonance of 10,000 swords. This rule was changed more than 200 years ago. As long as Mr. Yuqing can trigger the resonance of 100 swords, he will definitely be able to alert the hidden sword honorable. At that time, he will tell the hidden sword honorable about the current situation that our divine grace chamber of commerce is in. The hidden sword honorable will definitely not turn a blind eye. Su Xiao said happily. Su Tong nodded as well. However, she was not very optimistic. Resonance of 100 swords. Over the years, how many experts who claimed to be sword geniuses had come to the Wanjian Peak? But in the end, even the best one was only recognized by 12 sword spirits, which was 10 times worse than the resonance of 100 swords. Mr. Yuqing might be overflowing with talent, but judging from his attacking methods, he was obviously not a sword cultivator. Even in the hidden sword continent, where the sword was always respected, there was no one who could cause 100 swords to chant at the same time. Then, how could a person who came from outside the hidden sword continent and majored in the battle physique get the recognition of 100 sword spirits at the same time, which was also the recognition of all the spirit swords on the Myriad Sword Peak? Moreover, once Tsing Hui showed that he could trigger the resonance of 100 swords, the Golden Elixir Realm experts on the Aurora Peak and North Moon Peak would definitely interfere. After all, they were the ones who were most afraid of Hidden Sword Supreme. Tsing Hui did not know that his arrival on the Wanjian Peak had stirred up everyone's thoughts. The moment he stepped on the Wanjian Peak, he immediately felt that the peak was unusual. Sword Essence. In this mountain, his sword intent seemed to have been magnified by a magnifying glass. His original 10% sword intent could almost display 30% of its power. It allows a cultivator's sword intent power to increase by almost 3 times compared to before. Mental strength is different from other attributes. Increasing one's attack level by 10 might bring about a difference of several times, but increasing one's mental strength by 10 levels is the limit. This is also the reason why even without the help of secret techniques, a cultivator with a mental strength level of 60 or even a cultivator with a mental strength level of 90 can withstand the mental attacks of a cultivator with a mental strength level of 90. This 3 times increase is almost equivalent to raising my mental strength level from less than 100 to 120, or even 130. Tsing Hui was secretly surprised. This Myriad Swords Peak really did have some tricks up its sleeves. No wonder there was a rumor that this peak could give birth to a sword spirit. There was no smoke without fire. Tsing Hui slowly walked on the mountain path of Myriad Swords Peak with the help of his sword intent that had been stimulated several times. He carefully sensed the sword intents emitted by the many divine weapons on both sides of the mountain path. Compared to cultivators who were in the dark, he, whose sword intent was close to perfection, had a unique advantage in sensing spiritual swords. Even if he had converged the vast and majestic vital essence in his body when he set foot on the 10,000 Swords Peak, and even condensed the Golden Crow's divine soul and the Torch Dragon's divine soul in his spiritual world into a single point, forcefully compressing his cultivation base to below the awakening realm, he could still clearly determine which divine weapon contained a strong sword intent and which one contained a weak sword intent. Relying on this feeling, Tsing Hui searched for a moment on the mountain path and quickly sensed the location of a spirit sword. Buzz buzz. Standing in front of the spirit sword, Tsing Hui's sword intent burst out from his spiritual world, as if it had turned into an invisible sword and slashed into the spirit sword. As the spirit sword shook slightly, a stream of light burst out from the spirit sword, and soon, an elegant and otherworldly man appeared. The man's figure looked a little weak, but his aura was still fluctuating. He was not weaker than an expert in the awakening realm, and there was even a faint trend of him approaching the true energy realm. Moreover, as his figure appeared, he waved his hand, and the spirit sword immediately fell into his hand. With the sword in hand, the elegant and otherworldly aura on his body suddenly changed, becoming cold and sharp. Tsing Hui, who had compressed his vital essence and soul, felt a faint pain on his face when the sword was pointed at him. The strength of this deterrence had already exceeded that of an ordinary true energy realm cultivator. So you're the one who awakened my spirituality. The sword spirit held the spirit sword and muttered. Then, he seemed to look at his body again, and a trace of vicissitude and loneliness flashed in his eyes. I thought I would never wake up again. So. I still exist. Tsing Hui stared at the sword spirit in front of him, his expression grave. The mountain guarding elder's words were still in his ears. When dealing with sword spirits, one could not use cultivation beyond the true energy realm. Violators would be personally asked to leave the mountain by the mountain guarding elder. However, the piercingly cold and sharp aura emitted from the sword spirit in front of him, how could he win without using cultivation above the true energy realm? My name is Teng Shuo. The man slowly came back to his senses and held the spirit sword in his hand horizontally. Experiencer, use your way of the sword to defeat me. Let me know that a true swordsman still exists in this world. Way of the sword. Hearing the man's words, Tsing Hui's heart skipped a beat, as if he had vaguely thought of something. However, at this time, the man named Teng Shuo in front of him did not give him any more time. He brazenly attacked and stabbed out with his sword. This sword was only equivalent to the strength of an awakening realm cultivator. However, the moment this sword was stabbed out, Tsing Hui felt that his vision was completely filled with the sword light of this sword. It was a kind of indescribable brilliance. It was also a kind of brilliance that could not be described with words. Qing Su saw a charm in the strike, a charm that made his mind sink into it. It was just like how if a person was painting quietly in a garden and the autumn wind rustled in, when outsiders stepped into the garden, they would be attracted by the concept in the painting. They would also slow down unknowingly, afraid that their footsteps would disturb the tranquility and beauty. The sword that Teng Shuo had stabbed out was the same. That kind of concentration, that kind of naturalness, made him feel as if his mind was seized by the sword light of this sword, and he was immersed in the sword's elegance. After a while, the sword intent roared. The shock formed by the collision of the two sword intents caused Tsing Hui to quickly wake up. At this time, he seemed to have thought that he was fighting with this sword spirit in swordsmanship, not admiring the mystery of the other party's swordsmanship and immersing himself in the mystery of the other party's swordsmanship. Without any hesitation, Tsing Hui's body, which had been liberated multiple times and constantly tempered, erupted with a powerful force. The sword light flashed, sweeping out bursts of thunder under the extreme speed, fiercely colliding with Teng Shuo's sword shadow that was stabbing down. Although he deliberately suppressed the inner qi in his body and even condensed the divine souls of the Golden Crow and the Torch Dragon into a single point, the pure power brought by his strong physique still shook the spirit sword in Teng Shuo's hand and sent it flying backward. The tranquil and intoxicating sword intent was completely shattered by this overbearing and violent power. breaking all techniques with one force. Bang! The spirituality collapsed. A part of Ting Shua's body suddenly disappeared, flying more than 10 meters away before falling to the ground. His face was even more gloomy than before. He glanced at Xing Hui and did not launch another attack. Instead, he shook his head regretfully, and then, the spirituality converged and re-injected into the spirit sword. At this time, Xing Hui seemed to see clearly that the spirit sword's name was Ting Shua. What is this? Xing Hui walked a few steps to Ting Shua's sword, his mind not only recalling the tranquil sword intent that he had suddenly immersed himself in, but at the same time, the image of Ting Shua's spirit body converging flashed across his mind. I defeated the sword spirit, but didn't get the sword spirit's recognition. Xing Hui figured out what had happened to him. Although he had suppressed the power of his true essence and divine soul, his body, which had been constantly tempered by true essence over the years, still had a crushing advantage over the sword spirit, who was merely at the awakening realm. Just now, when he suddenly woke up from the shock of Ting Shua's sword intent, he did not control his strength well and severely injured the sword spirit, so, failed. Frowning, Xing Hui stepped forward again and used his sword intent to shake Ting Shua's sword spirit, trying to awaken the sword spirit of Ting Shua. Unfortunately, there was no movement. Ting Shua's sword seemed to have turned into an ordinary iron sword. It did not respond to Xing Hui's sword intent at all. Helpless, Xing Hui could only change his direction. He slightly sensed the area where the sword intent was stronger and walked toward the next spirit sword. As Xing Hui had just set foot on Wanjian Peak, he was not far from the foot of the mountain. Everyone at the foot of the mountain clearly saw the process of him fighting with the sword spirit. Although he defeated the sword spirit, he did not get the sword spirit's recognition. The cultivators on North Moon Peak, Aurora Peak, and other peaks all breathed a sigh of relief. It really didn't work. It seems that we worried too much. Like I said, the top sword masters of the hidden sword continent who have dedicated their lives to the sword can only get the recognition of a few sword spirits. Yu Qing, even if he has amazing means, it is still wishful thinking for him to get the recognition of the sword spirit. He can find a spirit sword in the first place and awaken the sword spirit in the spirit sword. It can be seen that he has some ability, but this ability is not worth mentioning for many cultivators of the hidden sword continent. If we talk about the study and understanding of sword manuals, swordsmanship, the hidden sword continent can definitely be ranked in the top 10 even in Heaven Wasteland. All kinds of voices came from the mouths of the people of the hidden sword sect. They all had expected this. Su Shao and the others of the Shenhui Chamber of Commerce also looked lonely. Mr. Yu Qing. Sigh. Perhaps Mr. Yu Qing is an expert in the way of the sword in his master's eyes, but to our hidden sword continent, he's nothing. You have to know that the great hidden sword venerable had once discussed the way of the sword with the White Rainbow Sword Sect's Supreme Sword Master. And in the end, the Supreme Sword Master was impressed by his understanding of the way of the sword. From this, it can be seen that the hidden sword venerable's understanding of the way of the sword and our hidden sword sect's deep foundation in the way of the sword. Even the disciples of our hidden sword sect can't cause 100 swords to chant at the same time, let alone Mr. Yu Qing, who's just a cultivator of the sword, Xing Lian sighed. Although they had already guessed that this might be the result when Xing Hui went to Wanjian Peak, when this scene really happened in front of them, they still could not suppress the disappointment in their hearts. The idea of awakening the hidden sword venerable by going to Wanjian Peak was obviously not going to work. Chapter 480. Bang! Another sword spirit was defeated by Xing Hui. It turned into a beam of light and returned to the spiritual sword without a sound. This was the third sword spirit that Xing Hui had defeated. He defeated the sword spirits again and again, but failed to gain their recognition. He was just like those cultivators who had come to the Myriad Swords Peak. When the people at the foot of the mountain saw this, their interest was greatly reduced. Almost half of the cultivators who had gathered at the foot of the mountain to watch the show had left. Even the people from the Aurora Peak, the North Moon Peak, and the Hidden Sword Peak who had heard the news had left. Only the people from the Divine Grace Chamber of Commerce stayed. They looked at Xing Hui, who was gradually becoming indistinct. There was an indescribable sadness in their eyes. It shouldn't have anything to do with cultivation. Xing Hui recalled the sword spirit that he had just defeated. He had been fighting with the sword spirit for 6 whole hours. During those 6 hours, he had been controlling his own strength, keeping it at the level of the awakening realm. Even if it was only the strength of his body, he had not used any attacks above the true energy realm. But even so, in the end, he still did not gain the recognition of that sword spirit. If it's not related to my own strength, then, what method should I use to defeat them to gain their recognition? Xing Hui was silent for a moment. He stepped forward again and came in front of a new spiritual sword. Buzz, buzz. The sword essence vibrated. The spiritual sword in front of him was stimulated by Xing Hui's sword essence and immediately manifested. This was a sword spirit with a sharp aura that gave people a feeling of coldness. My name is Tian Quebec. I'm a cultivator. Let me see your sword principle. Wait. Xing Hui looked at the sword spirit, Tian Ke, who was about to summon his spiritual sword and attack. He said in a low voice, "What exactly is the sword principle that you keep talking about? When I fought with the previous sword spirits, I used my own comprehension of sword intent and used it as a foundation to activate the sword arts derived from sword intent. However, I was unable to gain your recognition time and time again. Then, tell me, what is the way of the sword that you speak of? Sword Dao, what exactly is it?" Xing Hui's question made Tian Ke a little confused. It looked at Xing Hui as if it was thinking of something. However, after a long while, it still frowned and could not think of anything. I don't know. It's been too long. Perhaps it's because my memories are missing, or perhaps it's because of some other reason. In short, I can't answer you. But there's a voice in my heart telling me that the brand of my sword Dao still remains in my body. When I see a sword Dao that can truly resonate with me, I'll naturally acknowledge its existence. Tian Ke said in a low voice. His tone seemed to contain an indescribable pain. It was a pain that even it did not understand. It was as if it clearly knew that it had something incomparably important to it, something so important that it had given up its entire life. However, it was unaware of it and still stubbornly clung to that belief, waiting for the day when it would awaken and regain its glory. Let's begin. Tian Ke said with a hollow tone, as though he was an artificial intelligence mechanically carrying out his duties. That was all. Bang! The swords clashed and sparks burst forth. An hour later, Tian Ke's spirituality dimmed. He looked at Xing Hui, who had been suppressing his strength and had been stabbed 12 times. There was still no light in his eyes, as though he was an old man with one foot in the grave. You worked very hard. But this is not the sword principle that I want, whoosh. As Tian Ke finished speaking, his figure returned to the spiritual sword, but it had lost its color. Phew! Xing Hui panted slightly. Even though he had been stabbed 12 times, the recovery effect was too strong. In the time it took for him to catch his breath, the sword wounds had already begun to heal. In less than 10 breaths, only a red mark was left on the sword wounds. It's still not the sword principle. Could it be that I have to suppress my strength to the blood-changing realm? But the strength of a sword spirit surpasses that of an ordinary true Qi realm cultivator. Compared to a spirit refining realm cultivator, they are not inferior. In addition, they are equivalent to the combination of sword intents. Even if their spirituality has been worn down over the years, they still have a strong resistance against sword intents. My sword intents are only able to display less than 10% of its power. If I were to suppress my strength to the blood-changing realm, even with the recovery effect of a rank 10 true Qi realm cultivator, I would not be their opponent. Xing Hui was filled with heaviness. The difference in strength was too big. It was not something that he could win by risking his life. Sword principle. Xing Hui carefully recalled the words of the sword spirits. Almost every sword spirit would mention the two words sword principle. It could be seen that the core of the problem was the sword principle. As for the sword principle, is the killing sword principle of the ancient sword principle considered a sword principle that could gain their recognition? Xing Hui's mind flashed with various changes regarding the killing sword principle. However, the ancient killing sword principle corresponded to the white tiger, one of the 6 saints. In the cultivation world, the upper limit of a ferocious beast's growth was the immortal level. Even the top ferocious beasts would reach the peak of immortal level rank 6 if they did not encounter a great opportunity. Spiritual beasts' growth was rank 12, while holy beasts' growth was rank 18. The 6 saints' growth was between mythical beasts and holy beasts. Their growth could reach rank 19, and some of them could even reach rank 20 if they were lucky enough. However, compared to the many sword principles that Xing Hui was using, they were still lacking. One had to know that although most of the sword manuals that he had obtained were only at the endless and golden core levels, the principles of these sword manuals were basically aimed at mythical beasts. The strength of the sword principle was directly related to the principles of the sword. After all, the sword principle was the cultivator's own will. After a moment of silence, Xing Hui went forward again. Not long after, he found another sword spirit. While he was deep in thought and searching for the sword spirit, his injuries had all recovered. Although his clothes were tattered and he looked a little pathetic, it did not affect his combat strength at all. Buzz buzz. The sword principle was activated. Soon, the sword spirit in the spiritual sword was awakened. A middle-aged man who looked gentle and elegant like a spring breeze appeared in front of Xing Hui. When the man appeared, his eyes were also filled with confusion. However, after a while, he recovered and nodded slightly at Xing Hui. It's been a long time since I've seen a satisfactory experiencer. I hope your sword principle can inspire me. I'm Qin Yi, please enlighten me. Sword principle. Xing Hui looked at the man in front of him. Although he did not have much hope, he still said, I want to know, what exactly is the sword principle that you speak of? What is your sword principle? What exactly is the sword principle that we speak of? Qin Yi was slightly stunned while a trace of bewilderment appeared on his face. After that, he seemed to have fallen into deep thought, and this sort of deep thought only lasted for a few breaths of time before it was gradually replaced by a trace of pain and helplessness. My sword Dao. I'm sorry. Perhaps it has been too long, and I've already forgotten exactly what my sword Dao is. You've forgotten. Xing Hui looked at Qin Yi in disbelief. As a sword spirit, you can actually forget your sword principle. I can't understand it either. But, it's been too long. Too much time has passed. Anything can happen in such a long period of time. Maybe I suffered some serious injury and lost my memories, or maybe my way of the sword was defeated by someone and disappeared, leaving only the instincts of the way of the sword in me, or maybe, some other reason. But experiencer, this is not something you need to ask. Let me see your way of the sword. Wait, I have another question. Why do you call me experiencer? Why? A trace of confusion flashed in Qin Ye's eyes. I can't answer you. It's been too long, and I can't remember clearly. Perhaps this is my mission here, the too long you speak of. Just how long is it? Qin Yi shook his head. I've already forgotten the concept of time from repeated extremely long slumbers. I only know that countless lifetimes might have passed. I don't remember much anymore. Since you've woken me up, then I hope your sword Dao can be refreshing and inject a trace of a ripple into my life that's like a pool of stagnant water. In the next moment, Qin Yi no longer spoke to him, and attacked with his sword. His sword principle was like a cool breeze. It was like a leisurely early summer, facing the gentle sunlight, looking for a willow tree by a clear stream, lying down on the green grass under the willow tree, with a blade of grass in his mouth, feeling the cool breeze, looking up at the clear blue sky and white clouds. Enough. A voice suddenly interrupted this indescribable feeling of relaxation. In the next moment, the scorching sun shone brightly. The sun above his head that was emitting gentle sunlight became incomparably tyrannical. Endless radiance mixed with rolling heat waves, burning this picturesque scenery of the mountains into ashes. This was the counterattack of Tsing Hui's sword principle. He had had enough of defeating the sword spirits time and time again, and seeing their regretful and dejected expressions time and time again. He had already lost patience with his adventures in the myriad swords peak. Next, he was not willing to forcefully suppress his own cultivation. At least, he would not suppress his cultivation to the level of a mortal, causing himself to be injured every time he fought with the sword spirits. Even if these injuries were nothing to his 10th level recovery ability, and he would completely recover in a short time, but he had had enough. He wanted to use the dominance of his sword principle to crush them fair and square. There were so many sword spirits on the mountain. After crushing all of them, he did not believe that he would not be able to obtain the recognition of 100 sword spirits and trigger 100 sword hymns. Bang! Qin Ye's figure abruptly appeared from the scroll-like illusion. However, unlike the other sword spirits, after being forcibly defeated by Tsing Hui's sword principle, its face did not have its usual dejected expression. Instead, it had a trace of surprise. What a tyrannical sword principle, what a violent sword principle. This sword principle is like a huge sun with boundless power, burning the sky and boiling the sea. As expected, the sword principle that I have comprehended is not suitable for killing at all. It is only suitable for the mountains and rivers. Your sword principle is the true sword principle of killing. Looking at Qin Yi, who had a strange expression, Tsing Hui paused slightly. My sword principle. Although your mastery of the sword Tao is still shallow, you've already laid down a foundation. My sword Tao is not focused on killing, so it's impossible for me to be a match for your sword Tao. Therefore, you've obtained my approval. Cultivator, please tell me your name. Tsing Hui looked at Qin Yi, somewhat stunned. He succeeded just like that. So simple. Could it be that these sword spirits all bullied the weak and feared the strong? He used all his strength and immediately obtained the recognition of a sword spirit. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.